Tonight you are about to step into a forgotten world long before civilization where every night could be your last. The mountain waits in the distance, quiet enough to seem harmless, yet powerful enough to erase entire valleys before sunrise. Why would anyone choose to live beneath its shadow? Why would ancient gatherers walk willingly towards smoking hills instead of away from them? Hidden beneath the dark earth lies a secret that fed generations long before written history, a secret so valuable that countless people accepted extraordinary risks simply to touch it. Before we step deeper into the darkness of tonight's story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe for more calming historical journeys. And while you're settling in for tonight's adventure, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what your local time is. It's always comforting to imagine this quiet circle of history lovers spread across the world, each preparing for a peaceful night's rest. Now dim the lights and allow your breathing to slow as the modern world quietly slips away. The evening air feels different here. Cool, damp, heavy with the faint scent of stone that once flowed like water. You walk along a narrow animal trail winding through thick woodland. Moss cushions every step beneath your feet, soft enough to hide your movement from both prey and predator. Tall trees surround you, but they grow farther apart than the forest you remember. Their trunks rise from unusually dark ground, almost black in places, as though the earth itself had been burned long ago. The silence seems complete. Then a distant bird calls across the valley. A gentle breeze carries the earthy smell of damp leaves mixed with something sharper, almost metallic. You cannot name it. No one in your small band has words for invisible minerals or volcanic chemistry. You simply know this place smells alive in an unfamiliar way. Behind you lies country your ancestors knew well. Ahead waits uncertain. For generations, your family wandered between rivers, forests, and open grasslands, following seasons instead of maps. Food appeared where nature allowed it. Berries ripened for only a few weeks. Nuts dropped during autumn. Herds wandered without warning. Every meal depended on patience, memory, and a little luck. Life demanded movement, always movement, yet lately something has changed. The older hunters returned from distant journeys carrying stories whispered beside evening fires. They described valleys where plants seemed impossibly large. Berry bushes bent beneath their own weight. Wild grains stood taller than a person's waist. Fruit trees produced harvests that lasted longer than expected. Some listeners laughed, others became curious. You became both. No one fully understood why these remarkable places existed. The storytellers only agreed upon one detail. Each valley stood beneath an ancient mountain that sometimes breathed smoke. Historians today know that volcanic soil often becomes extraordinarily fertile after eruptions gradually weather into mineral-rich earth. Elements like phosphorus, potassium, iron, magnesium, and countless trace nutrients slowly nourish plants for centuries. Ancient gatherers, of course, never measured chemical composition. They only noticed results that seemed almost magical. The land simply gave more, far more. Your small group has followed those rumors for many weeks, crossing streams, climbing rocky ridges, and sleeping beneath unfamiliar stars. The journey has not been easy. Children grew tired. Food sometimes ran low. Several nights passed with little more than roasted roots and bitter greens. Still you continued. Hope can be surprisingly filling. The path descends gently now, revealing an open valley unlike any you have ever seen. Moonlight spreads across wide meadows, shimmering with healthy grasses. Clusters of shrubs carry thick branches weighed down by fruit. Even the trees seem taller, their crowns fuller than those farther away. Everything grows with quiet confidence, almost effortlessly. A small stream winds through the landscape, reflecting silver light, while frogs sing somewhere among the reeds. The water tastes cool, carrying a faint mineral flavor that lingers pleasantly on your tongue. Nearby deer graze without obvious fear. They appear well-fed. Healthy animals often reveal healthy landscapes. You crouch beside the soil and gently press your fingers into it. It feels loose, soft, moist beneath the surface despite several dry days. Tiny fragments of dark rock crumble easily between your fingertips. The ground seems eager to welcome roots. You cannot explain why. Neither can anyone else. Some researchers believe prehistoric people intentionally sought these landscapes after recognizing patterns repeated across generations. Others suggest they simply followed animals that naturally preferred nutrient-rich vegetation growing on volcanic soils. The truth remains uncertain because written records would not appear for thousands of years, leaving archaeologists to assemble stories from scattered clues buried beneath the earth. Perhaps both explanations hold pieces of truth. Nature rarely follows only one path. As dawn approaches, the forest gradually awakens. Small birds flutter through branches searching for insects. A distant woodpecker taps rhythmically against old bark. Somewhere uphill, unseen water trickles over smooth stones with steady patience. The sounds blend together gently. Nothing feels rushed. You notice unfamiliar plants growing in remarkable abundance. Thick ferns spread wide across the forest floor. Wild herbs release pleasant aromas whenever brushed by passing animals. Mushrooms cluster around fallen logs larger than any collected during earlier journeys. Not every mushroom is friendly. Everyone knows that. Ancient families passed careful knowledge from generation to generation through observation rather than written instruction. A grandmother might recognize dangerous caps from subtle color differences. An experienced gatherer remembered which fungi attracted insects and which remained untouched. Mistakes could become permanent teachers, sometimes only once. One curious belief occasionally appears in folklore surrounding volcanic landscapes. Some traditional communities imagined mountains intentionally growing special foods after periods of destruction, almost as an apology from the earth itself. While no evidence proves such stories existed among the earliest gatherers, remarkably similar themes appear across cultures separated by vast distances and centuries. Perhaps people everywhere searched for kindness inside frightening places. It feels deeply human. Your companions begin quietly exploring the valley. Children laugh softly after discovering patches of sweet berries. Older gatherers inspect unfamiliar plants with cautious excitement. Hunters study fresh animal tracks crossing damp ground toward nearby water. Everything suggests abundance, yet nobody celebrates too loudly. The mountain still watches. Far beyond the valley rises a broad silhouette against the brightening sky. Its upper slopes disappear beneath drifting clouds, although one thin ribbon of pale smoke slowly curls upward before vanishing into morning light. Not much smoke, just enough. Enough to remind everyone where this remarkable land came from. The oldest member of your group gazes silently toward the distant peak for several moments before kneeling to touch the ground. No dramatic ceremony follows. Only quiet respect. Even without scientific knowledge, ancient people often recognize relationships between landscapes and survival. They may not have understood plate tectonics, magma chambers, or volcanic gases, yet repeated experience taught valuable lessons. Rich harvests came from these dark valleys. Occasional danger came from the same direction. Both truths lived together. Neither could be ignored. As the first warm sunlight reaches the valley floor, tiny droplets of dew sparkle across endless green leaves. The entire landscape seems to glow with gentle life. You inhale slowly. The air smells fresh, earthy, and slightly smoky all at once. Ahead lies opportunity unlike anything your family has ever known. Behind you waits the familiar uncertainty of endless wandering. For now your feet remain still upon the black earth, listening to birdsong, feeling cool soil beneath your hands and wondering whether the mountain has offered a gift, or merely delayed collecting its price. The answer will not arrive today. It rarely does. Instead, it unfolds one quiet season at a time, just as every ancient journey begins with a single careful step into the unknown. Section 3. The third sunrise feels different, not because the valley has changed, but because you have. The unfamiliar has begun to feel almost welcoming. Morning mist rises gently from the stream, curling between clusters of alder and willow before dissolving into warm golden light. Dew sparkles across broad leaves, and somewhere overhead a pair of ravens exchange deep rolling calls that echo against the distant mountainside. The air smells wonderfully rich. Fresh grass mingles with damp stone wild herbs and the faint mineral scent that seems woven into every breath here. You kneel once again and press your hand into the black soil. It welcomes you. The earth feels softer than the hard-packed ground of the valleys you left behind. Tiny grains slip easily between your fingers, dark enough to stain your skin. Unlike sandy riverbanks or heavy clay flats, this soil seems almost alive, holding moisture without becoming sticky. Even without words for fertility, you understand one simple truth. Plants love this place. Several members of your band spend the morning gathering familiar foods. They fill woven baskets with berries, dig edible roots using sharpened wooden sticks, and collect handfuls of tender shoots growing beside fallen trees. Yet something unexpected happens. A younger woman notices that several seeds dropped beside last season's campsite have begun sprouting in neat little clusters. She pauses, then kneels. The tiny green shoots look remarkably healthy, standing straighter and taller than wild grasses surrounding them. No one planted them deliberately, at least not in the modern sense. They simply fell from baskets during previous visits. Still, here they are, growing. That quiet discovery lingers in everyone's thoughts throughout the morning. Modern archaeology suggests that agriculture did not suddenly appear one remarkable day. Instead, it emerged through countless small observations spread across generations. Ancient gatherers repeatedly noticed where useful plants returned naturally, gradually learning that scattered seeds often rewarded patient attention. The process was astonishingly slow, almost invisible. You watch an older man carefully loosen the soil around several edible tubers without removing every plant. Some remain untouched beneath the ground. At first, this seems strange. Food is precious. Why leave any behind? The answer reveals itself months later. Plants spared during one season often return stronger the next. No written lesson teaches this. The earth does. Historians widely agree that many prehistoric communities practiced forms of resource management long before organized farming developed. Exactly how intentional these early techniques became remains debated. Some scholars describe them as sophisticated ecological knowledge. Others argue they were gradual habits that eventually led toward cultivation. Perhaps there is little difference. Wisdom often grows before language explains it. The valley itself seems eager to participate. Gentle breezes carry pollen between flowering plants. Bees move lazily from blossom to blossom, their soft humming blending with distant birdsong. Butterflies drift above patches of wild herbs, while dragonflies skim low across the stream's smooth surface. Everywhere life multiplies. The abundance feels almost impossible. You remember lean summers in other regions where berry bushes produced only scattered fruit after dry weather. There were seasons when entire days passed searching for enough edible roots to satisfy hungry children. Here gathering requires less wandering, less uncertainty, less desperation. That changes everything. When food becomes easier to find, time quietly appears. Time to repair shelters. Time to shape better tools. Time to teach children. Time to notice things previously overlooked. This may have been one of volcanic soil's greatest gifts. Not merely larger harvests, a different rhythm of life. As midday approaches, several children begin playing beside the stream while adults collect broad edible leaves nearby. One curious boy drops a handful of seeds into freshly disturbed soil after watching birds scratch at the ground. He laughs, then forgets about them. No ceremony follows. No one announces the birth of agriculture. History rarely arrives with fanfare. Instead, enormous changes often begin with ordinary moments that nobody recognizes at the time. A gentle wind stirs the treetops. The leaves whisper softly overhead. You notice that many plants growing here possess unusually deep green colors. Their stems feel sturdy beneath your fingers. Even wild grasses seem thicker than those covering distant plains. Today, scientists know that volcanic soils often contain remarkable supplies of minerals released slowly as volcanic rock weathers over centuries. Combined with excellent drainage and moisture retention, these conditions create landscapes capable of supporting extraordinary plant growth. Ancient gatherers simply smiled at full baskets. The explanation mattered less than the result. One fascinating possibility continues to intrigue archaeologists. In several volcanic regions around the world, evidence suggests people repeatedly returned to the same fertile valleys for thousands of years before establishing permanent settlements. Whether these visits gradually evolved into seasonal gardens or remained organized gathering expeditions remains uncertain. The footprints disappeared long ago. Only fragments remain. The afternoon grows pleasantly warm. You wander deeper into the valley where sunlight filters gently through tall trees. Thick moss cushions, fallen logs releasing an earthy fragrance whenever touched. Ferns unfold beside shaded rocks while clusters of edible mushrooms appear beneath ancient oaks. Every step offers another meal. Not every discovery proves safe. An experienced gatherer suddenly raises one hand. Everyone stops. She kneels beside two nearly identical plants growing only inches apart. Their leaves share the same shape. Their flowers appear almost identical. Almost. She quietly points to the slight difference. One feeds, one harms. Children watch carefully. No one interrupts. Knowledge passes without writing, without classrooms, without books. Only observation, only memory, only trust. Anthropologists often describe this kind of ecological knowledge as one of humanity's earliest and most remarkable intellectual achievements. Entire libraries of practical information lived inside human memory, carried from elder to child through stories, demonstrations, and countless peaceful walks much like this one. Lose one generation, lose an encyclopedia. As evening approaches, your group returns carrying unusually heavy baskets. Roots, berries, wild grains, tender shoots, medicinal herbs, everything collected within a relatively short distance from camp. The older hunter studies the growing piles thoughtfully. "We walked less," he murmurs, "but gathered more." The words settle quietly over everyone. Walking less means spending fewer dangerous nights in unfamiliar country. It means children grow stronger. It means elders travel more comfortably. It means injuries become easier to survive. Food shapes far more than hunger. It shapes possibility. Around the evening fire, several women begin separating the day's collection. Large seeds are placed into one woven basket, smaller ones into another. Damaged seeds are set aside for immediate cooking. The healthiest remain untouched. At first glance, this simply appears practical. Perhaps it is. Yet historians still debate whether such unconscious selection gradually influenced the evolution of cultivated plants. Choosing larger, healthier seeds year after year may have slowly encouraged desirable traits long before anyone intentionally bred crops. Nature and humanity quietly collaborated, neither fully aware. Darkness settles gently across the valley. The fire crackles softly, sending warm orange light dancing across patient faces. Smoke drifts upward through branches where stars now shine between the leaves. Somewhere in the distance, wolves begin calling to one another across the hills. The sound feels far away, not threatening, simply part of the night. You reach into one basket and roll several smooth seeds across your palm. So small, so ordinary. Each could become another meal, or many meals, perhaps even enough to change the future of families not yet born. The mountain watches silently beyond the trees, its broad outlines softened beneath silver moonlight. The same volcano that once buried forests beneath burning ash has slowly transformed that destruction into astonishing fertility. Creation and destruction share the same birthplace. You understand only a tiny part of that mystery, yet your hands now hold living evidence that the richest soil does more than feed empty stomachs. It quietly encourages new ideas, one careful observation, one forgotten seed, one season after another, and without anyone realizing it, humanity begins taking its first gentle steps toward a completely different relationship with the earth beneath its feet. Section 3. The third sunrise feels different, not because the valley has changed, but because you have. The unfamiliar has begun to feel almost welcoming. Morning mist rises gently from the stream, curling between clusters of alder and willow before dissolving into warm golden light. Dew sparkles across broad leaves, and somewhere overhead a pair of ravens exchange deep rolling calls that echo against the distant mountainside. The air smells wonderfully rich. Fresh grass mingles with damp stone wild herbs and the faint mineral scent that seems woven into every breath here. You kneel once again and press your hand into the black soil. It welcomes you. The earth feels softer than the hard-packed ground of the valleys you left behind. Tiny grains slip easily between your fingers, dark enough to stain your skin. Unlike sandy riverbanks or heavy clay flats, this soil seems almost alive, holding moisture without becoming sticky. Even without words for fertility, you understand one simple truth. Plants love this place. Several members of your band spend the morning gathering familiar foods. They fill woven baskets with berries, dig edible roots using sharpened wooden sticks, and collect handfuls of tender shoots growing beside fallen trees. Yet something unexpected happens. A younger woman notices that several seeds dropped beside last season's campsite have begun sprouting in neat little clusters. She pauses, then kneels. The tiny green shoots look remarkably healthy, standing straighter and taller than wild grasses surrounding them. No one planted them deliberately, at least not in the modern sense. They simply fell from baskets during previous visits. Still, here they are, growing. That quiet discovery lingers in everyone's thoughts throughout the morning. Modern archaeology suggests that agriculture did not suddenly appear one remarkable day. Instead, it emerged through countless small observations spread across generations. Ancient gatherers repeatedly noticed where useful plants returned naturally, gradually learning that scattered seeds often rewarded patient attention. The process was astonishingly slow. Almost invisible. You watch an older man carefully loosen the soil around several edible tubers without removing every plant. Some remain untouched beneath the ground. At first, this seems strange. Food is precious. Why leave any behind? The answer reveals itself months later. Plants spared during one season often return stronger the next. No written lesson teaches this. The earth does. Historians widely agree that many prehistoric communities practiced forms of resource management long before organized farming developed. Exactly how intentional these early techniques became remains debated. Some scholars describe them as sophisticated ecological knowledge. Others argue they were gradual habits that eventually led toward cultivation. Perhaps there is little difference. Wisdom often grows before language explains it. The valley itself seems eager to participate. Gentle breezes carry pollen between flowering plants. Bees move lazily from blossom to blossom, their soft humming blending with distant birdsong. Butterflies drift above patches of wild herbs, while dragonflies skim low across the stream's smooth surface. Everywhere life multiplies. The abundance feels almost impossible. You remember lean summers in other regions where berry bushes produced only scattered fruit after dry weather. There were seasons when entire days passed searching for enough edible roots to satisfy hungry children. Here gathering requires less wandering, less uncertainty, less desperation. That changes everything. When food becomes easier to find, time quietly appears. Time to repair shelters. Time to shape better tools. Time to teach children. Time to notice things previously overlooked. This may have been one of volcanic soil's greatest gifts. Not merely larger harvests, a different rhythm of life. As midday approaches, several children begin playing beside the stream while adults collect broad edible leaves nearby. One curious boy drops a handful of seeds into freshly disturbed soil after watching birds scratch at the ground. He laughs, then forgets about them. No ceremony follows. No one announces the birth of agriculture. History rarely arrives with fanfare. Instead, enormous changes often begin with ordinary moments that nobody recognizes at the time. A gentle wind stirs the treetops. The leaves whisper softly overhead. You notice that many plants growing here possess unusually deep green colors. Their stems feel sturdy beneath your fingers. Even wild grasses seem thicker than those covering distant plains. Today, scientists know that volcanic soils often contain remarkable supplies of minerals released slowly as volcanic rock weathers over centuries. Combined with excellent drainage and moisture retention, these conditions create landscapes capable of supporting extraordinary plant growth. Ancient gatherers simply smiled at full baskets. The explanation mattered less than the result. One fascinating possibility continues to intrigue archaeologists. In several volcanic regions around the world, evidence suggests people repeatedly returned to the same fertile valleys for thousands of years before establishing permanent settlements. Whether these visits gradually evolved into seasonal gardens or remained organized gathering expeditions remains uncertain. The footprints disappeared long ago. Only fragments remain. The afternoon grows pleasantly warm. You wander deeper into the valley where sunlight filters gently through tall trees. Thick moss cushions, fallen logs releasing an earthy fragrance whenever touched. Ferns unfold beside shaded rocks while clusters of edible mushrooms appear beneath ancient oaks. Every step offers another meal. Not every discovery proves safe. An experienced gatherer suddenly raises one hand. Everyone stops. She kneels beside two nearly identical plants growing only inches apart. Their leaves share the same shape. Their flowers appear almost identical. Almost. She quietly points to the slight difference. One feeds, one harms. Children watch carefully. No one interrupts. Knowledge passes without writing, without classrooms, without books. Only observation, only memory, only trust. Anthropologists often describe this kind of ecological knowledge as one of humanity's earliest and most remarkable intellectual achievements. Entire libraries of practical information lived inside human memory, carried from elder to child through stories, demonstrations, and countless peaceful walks much like this one. Lose one generation, lose an encyclopedia. As evening approaches, your group returns carrying unusually heavy baskets. Roots, berries, wild grains, tender shoots, medicinal herbs, everything collected within a relatively short distance from camp. The older hunter studies the growing piles thoughtfully. "We walked less," he murmurs, "but gathered more." The words settle quietly over everyone. Walking less means spending fewer dangerous nights in unfamiliar country. It means children grow stronger. It means elders travel more comfortably. It means injuries become easier to survive. Food shapes far more than hunger. It shapes possibility. Around the evening fire, several women begin separating the day's collection. Large seeds are placed into one woven basket, smaller ones into another. Damaged seeds are set aside for immediate cooking. The healthiest remain untouched. At first glance, this simply appears practical. Perhaps it is. Yet historians still debate whether such unconscious selection gradually influenced the evolution of cultivated plants. Choosing larger, healthier seeds year after year may have slowly encouraged desirable traits long before anyone intentionally bred crops. Nature and humanity quietly collaborated, neither fully aware. Darkness settles gently across the valley. The fire crackles softly, sending warm orange light dancing across patient faces. Smoke drifts upward through branches where stars now shine between the leaves. Somewhere in the distance, wolves begin calling to one another across the hills. The sound feels far away, not threatening, simply part of the night. You reach into one basket and roll several smooth seeds across your palm. So small, so ordinary. Each could become another meal, or many meals. Perhaps even enough to change the future of families not yet born. The mountain watches silently beyond the trees, its broad outlines softened beneath silver moonlight. The same volcano that once buried forests beneath burning ash has slowly transformed that destruction into astonishing fertility. Creation and destruction share the same birthplace. You understand only a tiny part of that mystery, yet your hands now hold living evidence that the richest soil does more than feed empty stomachs. It quietly encourages new ideas, one careful observation, one forgotten seed, one season after another, and without anyone realizing it, humanity begins taking its first gentle steps toward a completely different relationship with the earth beneath its feet. Our section 4, the valley no longer feels borrowed. It begins to feel familiar. Morning light spills gently across the dark fields, turning every dew-covered blade of grass into tiny points of silver. A cool breeze drifts down from the mountain carrying the scent of damp moss, crushed herbs, and distant pine. Somewhere beyond the trees, wood pigeons call to one another with slow, comforting rhythm, while the steady murmur of the nearby stream blends into the quiet music of another peaceful dawn. You rise before sunrise once again, not because you must, because you want to watch the mountain wake. Its broad slopes remain wrapped in soft morning cloud. The thin ribbon of steam still curls upward from somewhere near the summit, almost delicate against the brightening sky. Nothing appears threatening, yet no one completely relaxes. The children have already learned not to point carelessly toward the peak. The adults have learned something deeper. Never assume silence means safety. Over the following weeks, your small community begins doing something it has rarely done before. Instead of preparing to leave after only a handful of days, everyone starts improving the camp. Branches become stronger shelters. Stone circles become dependable hearths. Food storage pits are dug beneath shaded trees where cool soil keeps roots fresh longer. Little by little, temporary life begins looking surprisingly permanent. No one announces the decision. It simply happens. One careful improvement follows another, until your camp feels less like a stopping place and more like a home. Archaeologists believe that many prehistoric communities occupied especially productive landscapes for increasingly longer periods as food became more predictable. Exactly when seasonal camps transformed into semi-permanent settlements remains one of archaeology's great discussions. Different regions followed different paths, often across thousands of years rather than centuries. History moved quietly, almost invisibly. You notice something else changing. The pace of each day slows. There is still work. Always work. Roots must be gathered. Water must be carried. Children must be watched. Firewood must be collected before evening. Yet the frantic urgency of constant travel has faded. You are no longer racing the landscape. Instead, you begin learning it. You know which stream remains cool even during warm afternoons. You know where mushrooms appear after gentle rain. You know which hillside catches the first sunlight each morning. Knowledge grows here. Whose roots of its own. The mountain becomes a part of those lessons. Every dawn begins with someone quietly looking toward its summit. Not out of fear alone. Out of habit. The oldest hunter notices tiny changes long before anyone else. Some mornings the steam rises straight into the sky. Other days the breeze bends it gently toward the eastern forest. Occasionally it almost disappears. Who remembers each difference? No one writes these observations. They live inside memory. Scientists today understand that weather strongly influences how volcanic steam behaves. Wind direction, humidity, and air pressure can dramatically alter what people see from below. Ancient observers likely mixed these ordinary atmospheric changes with genuine volcanic signals, creating a careful tradition of watching everything rather than trusting any single clue. The mountain never offers simple answers. It rewards patience instead. One afternoon you climb a nearby ridge overlooking the valley. From above the landscape appears astonishing. The black soil forms broad ribbons stretching through green woodland like dark rivers frozen in place. Beyond them lie older hills covered in thinner forests where the earth looks pale and rocky. The difference is remarkable. The valley beneath the volcano almost glows with life. Deer gather in open meadows. Wild pigs root beneath oak trees. Birds circle above fruit-bearing shrubs. Predators follow. So do people. You begin realizing that the mountain feeds us far more than plants. It nourishes entire worlds. A younger hunter returns from scouting farther north with exciting news. Another small family has entered the valley. They camp beside a distant stream several hours away. No conflict follows. There is enough food for everyone, at least for now. Instead, the two groups cautiously exchange smiles across a meadow before continuing their separate work. The next morning they meet again. One family carries unusually sharp stone blades gathered from distant cliffs. The other offers baskets woven from reeds growing only in this fertile valley. No one calls it trade, it simply feels sensible. Anthropologists believe productive environments often encouraged regular encounters between otherwise distant groups. These meetings allowed ideas, tools, stories, and even marriage partners to travel far beyond their places of origin. Fertile volcanic landscapes may have quietly become important crossroads long before organizers' villages appeared. Food attracts more than hungry mouths. It attracts knowledge. As summer deepens, the valley grows even greener. Tall grasses sway gently beneath warm afternoon winds. Bees hum lazily through fields of flowering herbs. Dragonflies shimmer above the stream like tiny blue jewels catching the sunlight. The smells become richer too. Fresh mint, wild garlic, wheat blossom, warm earth. Occasionally the faint, smoky scent drifting from the mountain. Every fragrance reminds you where this abundance began. One evening after a brief rainfall, something remarkable appears. A rainbow arches across the valley. Its brilliant colours seem to begin almost directly above the mountain itself. Children gasp. Several adults smile quietly. An elderly woman kneels beside the fire and whispers that the sky has wrapped the mountain in a peaceful promise. Whether she truly believes those words hardly matters. The image comforts everyone. Across many later cultures, living near Volcanoes mountains became living beings rather than lifeless rocks. They were imagined as generous parents, sleeping giants, powerful spirits, or ancient guardians whose moods shaped daily life. Historians cannot confidently say when these beliefs first emerged, yet the emotional connection feels almost inevitable. Living beside immense natural power encourages imagination as much as observation. Respect easily becomes reverence. As the seasons continue, practical routines slowly develop. Every morning someone watches the summit. Someone else checks the springs. Children gather kind and close to camp. Older gatherers inspect berry patches. Hunters follow familiar game trails. Each person contributes, not through rigid rules, through shared understanding. One quiet afternoon, while collecting herbs near a rocky slope, you notice several birds suddenly taking flight together. Hundreds of wings burst upward. The sound fills the air. For a brief moment, everyone freezes. Even the wind seems to pause. Then nothing happens. The birds settle into a grove farther away. The forest becomes peaceful once again. You exhale slowly. False alarms become valuable lessons. Modern researchers know that animals sometimes behave strangely before earthquakes or volcanic events, though reliable scientific evidence remains mixed. Many reported examples prove difficult to verify, while others remain intriguing but unexplained. Ancient people almost certainly paid close attention to unusual animal behavior, even if interpreting its meaning remained uncertain. Sometimes caution costs very little. Ignoring danger can cost everything. That evening, the campfire burns steadily beneath a sky overflowing with stars. Children roast roots while elders polish wooden digging sticks with smooth volcanic stones. Sparks drift upward into cool darkness before disappearing among countless constellations. The mountain stands silently beyond the firelight. You study its enormous outline. It has become strangely familiar, not because it is less dangerous, because you now understand that danger and generosity often share the same home. Without the mountain, this valley would likely resemble countless others. The forests would be thinner, the harvests smaller, the animals fewer, the streams less rich. Everything extraordinary around you exists because unimaginable violence once transformed the landscape. Destruction became nourishment, ash became forests, stone became soil, fear became opportunity. The realization settles gently inside your thoughts as the fire grows lower. This place will never be completely safe. Everyone knows that. Yet tomorrow morning you will wake here again. You will gather food from the richest earth you have ever touched. You will watch the mountain before beginning your day. And slowly, almost without noticing, your family will become one more generation learning how to build a life beneath a sleeping giant whose greatest gift is matched only by the quiet reminder that every gift from nature arrives with its own measure of risk. Section 5. The forest seems older now. Not older by seasons, but by understanding. Each morning reveals details you somehow missed before. The sunlight filters through layers of broad green leaves, painting shifting patterns across the black earth. Ferns uncurl beside moss-covered stones, while tiny droplets of dew gather along delicate spiderwebs stretched between low branches. Somewhere deep within the trees, a cuckoo calls with slow-measured patience, answered only by the distant tapping of a woodpecker. The valley breathes quietly. So do you. Your feet now follow familiar paths worn gently into the soft volcanic soil. What once felt like wilderness has become a place filled with remembered landmarks. The twisted oak beside the stream, the broad flat rock warmed by afternoon sun, the spring where clear water bubbles endlessly from beneath ancient stone. Every corner carries a memory. I begin to notice that the forest itself seems unusually vigorous. The trees tower overhead with thick trunks wrapped in soft green moss. Branches stretch farther than those growing beyond the valley, supporting heavy crowns of leaves that whisper gently whenever mountain breezes arrive. Fallen logs disappear beneath blankets of fungi far more quickly than expected, returning quietly to the earth. Nothing here stays still for long. Everything grows, everything changes. Modern ecologists understand that forests developing on volcanic soils often display extraordinary productivity. Minerals released from weathered ash nourish plant life for generations, while porous volcanic ground stores water remarkably well. The result is a landscape where growth rarely seems to pause. To you, however, it simply feels like a generous forest, one that never stops giving. As the morning unfolds, you accompany several experienced gatherers deeper into the woodland. They move without haste, without unnecessary conversation. Every few steps, someone pauses to inspect a leaf, smell a flower, or examine fresh animal tracks pressed gently into damp soil. Observation has become second nature. An older woman stops beside an enormous tree whose roots spread across a low hillside like great wooden fingers. She places her hand against the bark. The trunk feels cool, rough, alive. Without speaking, she points toward the surrounding trees. Most appear healthy. A few younger saplings lean toward a patch of sunlight where an older giant fell many seasons ago. The forest wastes nothing. Every opening becomes another beginning. Archaeologists and paleoecologists have discovered that ancient volcanic landscapes often preserve remarkable evidence of long-term ecological recovery. After devastating eruptions, life frequently returns faster than early observers might expect. Grasses appear first, shrubs follow, then forests slowly reclaim the land, sometimes within a surprisingly short span, depending on the eruption's severity. Nature remembers how to rebuild. Even after fire, you kneel beside the exposed roots. The soil crumbles easily beneath your fingertips, revealing countless tiny insects moving through narrow tunnels. Small beetles, earthworms, busy ants carrying fragments of leaves. The ground itself seems crowded with unseen life. You cannot see the invisible fungi weaving between roots, exchanging nutrients beneath the forest floor. Neither can anyone else. Thousands of years later, scientists would discover enormous underground networks connecting trees through microscopic fungal threads. These living partnerships help forests share nutrients and water, particularly in rich volcanic environments. Ancient gatherers knew none of this, yet they sensed the forest functioned as one living whole. Sometimes intuition reaches truth before explanation. A soft breeze stirs overhead. The scent changes. Fresh pine gives way to the sweet fragrance of flowering shrubs hidden somewhere ahead. Soon you find them. Clusters of white blossoms attract dozens of buzzing bees. The sound fills the warm afternoon air. Steady, comforting, almost hypnotic. Several gatherers smile quietly. Flowers mean fruit. Fruit means another successful season. Nearby children collect fallen blossoms simply because they enjoy their delicate fragrance. One little girl tucks several into her braided hair before running after butterflies dancing through shafts of sunlight. Even play becomes part of learning. Children who wander forests notice which plants bloom first, which insects arrive next, which birds return with changing season. Knowledge begins long before adulthood. By midday, your group reaches a clearing unlike any you have seen before. Charred tree stumps still rise from the earth. Blackened wood remains scattered across the ground. Yet between them grows astonishingly vibrant vegetation. Tall grasses sway gently beside young saplings. Wildflowers blanket the clearing with color. Life has reclaimed destruction. The contrast feels almost impossible. Historians and geologists continue discussing how prehistoric communities interpreted landscapes recovering after ancient eruptions. Some scholars believe such places inspired stories of rebirth and renewal. Others argue people viewed them more practically, simply recognizing that burned land eventually produced excellent gathering opportunities. Perhaps both ideas live together. Practical wisdom and quiet wonder rarely compete. One curious observation appears repeatedly in volcanic regions across the world. Certain edible plants seem among the earliest to colonize disturbed ground, making recently recovered landscapes surprisingly attractive to gatherers. Whether ancient people intentionally sought these recovering areas or simply encountered them while traveling remains uncertain. The evidence whispers. It never shouts. The afternoon grows warmer. Sunlight filters through drifting clouds while dragonflies glide lazily above a nearby pond formed inside an old volcanic depression. The water sits perfectly still, almost mirror-like. Tiny frogs perch along its muddy edge, their gentle croaks blending with the distant rustling of leaves. You cup cool water in your hands. It tastes clean, slightly mineral, refreshing after hours of walking. Not far away, several wild boars root energetically beneath oak tree. trees turning over the rich soil in search of bulbs and insects. They seem unusually large, remarkably healthy. The older hunters exchange knowing smiles. Healthy forests feed healthy animals. Healthy animals feed people. Everything connects. Late in the afternoon, clouds gather briefly around the mountain's summit before drifting away again. The peak disappears, then returns, almost as though breathing. You watch carefully. No unusual sounds follow. No falling ash. Only moving clouds. Living beside a volcano teaches patience. Not every shadow signals danger. Not every change deserves fear. That lesson proves just as valuable as recognizing genuine warning signs. As evening approaches, everyone returns to camp carrying baskets overflowing with herbs, mushrooms, berries, nuts, and edible shoots. Today's walk required little effort. The forest seemed determined to provide. Around the fire, an elder begins sorting plants into neat bundles. Medicines, food, fibers, fragrant leaves used to keep insects away while sleeping. Each bundle reflects decades of careful observation. Nothing is gathered carelessly. Anthropologists often remark that prehistoric gatherers possessed astonishing botanical knowledge. In many traditional societies studied during recent centuries, individuals could identify hundreds of useful plants without written guides. Exactly how extensive this knowledge became among Ice Age or early Holocene communities remains debated, but archaeological evidence strongly suggests an impressive familiarity with local ecosystems. The forest served as both pantry and teacher. Its lessons never truly ended. Night settles gently across the valley. The fire crackles softly while warm smoke carries the comforting scent of roasting roots into the cool evening air. Above, countless stars appear between slowly swaying branches. Somewhere beyond the trees, an owl begins its patient hunt. Its call echoes once, then again. The mountain remains visible beneath pale moonlight, watching over the flourishing forest born from eruptions older than memory itself. You realize something quietly remarkable. The richest part of this valley is not the black soil alone. It is the entire living world the soil has patiently created. Towering trees, sweet berries, hidden mushrooms, buzzing insects, flowing streams, grazing deer, singing birds, and people learning season after season that the greatest treasures often grow from places once shaped by unimaginable fire. The mountain has written its history into every leaf surrounding you. All you must do is keep listening. Section 6. The morning begins with your hands in the soil, not because anyone has asked you to work, because curiosity has quietly replaced caution. The first light spreads across the valley, painting the dark earth with warm shades of bronze and gold. A gentle breeze carries the scent of wet leaves, crushed thyme, and distant cedar. Fine mist lingers above the stream before slowly dissolving beneath the rising sun, while small finches flutter through low shrubs searching for breakfast. Everything feels calm, comfortably familiar. You scoop a handful of the black earth into your palm. It is lighter than you expected. Not dusty, not heavy. The tiny grains slide easily between your fingers, leaving faint charcoal-colored streaks across your skin before falling silently back to the ground. It almost feels alive. You have touched many kinds of earth during your years of wandering. River mud that clung stubbornly to your feet, dry grassland soil that cracked beneath the summer sun, rocky hills where little beside stubborn shrubs could survive. None of them felt quite like this. This valley is different. The difference is impossible to ignore. An older woman kneels beside you and presses a sharpened digging stick into the ground. It sinks with surprising ease. She smiles quietly. The roots beneath the surface will come out without breaking. That matters. Every broken root means less food carried home. Every easier harvest means more energy saved for tomorrow. The soil itself has become a silent partner. Modern scientists now understand that volcanic ash gradually transforms into remarkably productive soil through thousands of tiny chemical and biological processes. Rainwater slowly breaks apart volcanic rock. Microscopic organisms settle into the fresh minerals. Decaying plants add organic matter season after season until an unusually fertile foundation develops beneath the forest. None of this is visible, yet all of it shapes your life. You only notice the result. Plants grow larger, roots grow deeper, harvests become more dependable. The valley seems generous without asking for much in return, at least most of the time. As the morning continues, several gatherers spread across a broad meadow where wild grains sway gently in the breeze. The stalks stand taller than those found in neighboring valleys. Their heads bend under the weight of mature seeds. You run your fingers gently across them. The grains feel full, firm, healthy. An elder quietly rubs several seeds between two flat stones before tasting them. Her nods with satisfaction. No celebration follows, only quiet appreciation. Over countless generations, ancient gatherers became remarkable observers of subtle differences between landscapes. They knew where berries ripened first, where roots grew thickest, and where grasses produced the richest seeds. Without chemistry, they built practical knowledge through repeated experience, slowly assembling an understanding of fertility that existed entirely through memory. Observation became science. Long before science had a name, the air grows warmer as sunlight reaches deeper into the valley. Bees drift lazily among flowering herbs. Their steady humming rises and falls like distant music. Butterflies settle briefly upon blossoms before floating away again. Even the insects appear unusually abundant. That is no coincidence. Healthy plants attract insects. Insects attract birds. Birds scatter seeds. Seeds create new forests. The valley quietly feeds itself. I begin noticing something else. Water disappears quickly after yesterday's brief shower. Small puddles that formed along the trail have already vanished, yet the ground beneath remains pleasantly moist. Your feet never sink into thick mud. The soil drinks deeply without becoming flooded. Today we know that volcanic soils often contain countless tiny spaces created by weathered volcanic materials. These spaces hold water remarkably well while allowing excess moisture to drain away. The result creates ideal growing conditions for many plants, especially during changing seasons. Ancient people simply noticed that crops survived dry weather better here. Sometimes practical wisdom arrives centuries before explanation. Near midday the group reaches a broad hillside warmed by steady sunlight. Edible tuberoses grow beneath the surface. The digging begins. Wooden sticks slip easily into the loose ground. Roots emerge whole instead of snapping apart. The work feels almost effortless compared to harder soils elsewhere. Children laugh while brushing loose earth from enormous roots. Even the elders seem less tired. One young man jokes that the mountain must secretly enjoy feeding hungry visitors. Several people chuckle softly. The oldest woman only smiles. She looks toward the distant peak before returning quietly to her work. Across many volcanic cultures recorded thousands of years later, mountains often became generous beings who offered food while expecting respect in return. Whether such beliefs existed among much earlier gatherers remains uncertain. Historians continue debating how prehistoric spirituality developed, especially before permanent settlements left clearer archaeological traces. Perhaps gratitude came first, stories followed later. As the afternoon unfolds, clouds drift lazily across the sky. Their moving shadows cool the fields for a few peaceful moments before sunlight returns. You climb a low ridge overlooking much of the valley. From here patterns become easier to see. The darkest soils support the tallest vegetation. Lighter patches produce smaller shrubs. Even without measuring anything, the relationship appears obvious. The earth tells its own story. You simply learn to read it. Nearby, several children discover colorful stones unlike any collected before. Some shimmer faintly in the sunlight. Others contain tiny crystals sparkling inside rough volcanic rock. They gather them with delighted curiosity. Not because they are useful, because they are beautiful. Beauty has value too. Archaeologists occasionally uncover volcanic stones carried surprising distances by prehistoric communities. Some became cutting tools, others appear to have served decorative or symbolic purposes. Exactly why certain stones traveled hundreds of miles remains uncertain. Practical usefulness explains part of the story, but human appreciation for unusual objects likely played a role as well. Curiosity is ancient. Older than cities, older than writing, perhaps as old as humanity itself. Late in the afternoon, the wind shifts gently. A faint scent reaches the valley, not smoke exactly. More like warm stone after rainfall. The older hunters pause almost simultaneously. They lift their heads, listen, watch. Nothing unusual follows. The birds continue singing. The deer continue grazing. The stream continues its endless conversation with polished stones. The moment passes quietly. Still everyone remembers it. Living beside a volcano teaches restraint. Not every unusual sign deserves panic. Neither should any be ignored. Balance becomes another form of survival. As evening approaches, baskets fill once more. Wild grains, roots, herbs, tender shoots, nuts, everything gathered within walking distance of camp. You realize how rarely anyone now speaks about hunger. Instead, conversations drift toward improving shelters, repairing baskets, teaching children, carving stronger digging sticks. Abundance changes the subjects people discuss. That may be one of its greatest gifts. The fire burns warmly beneath a sky painted with soft shades of orange and violet. Smoke rises gently into the cooling evening air, carrying the comforting aroma of roasting roots mixed with fragrant herbs. The day's harvest rests nearby in carefully woven baskets, enough for many meals, perhaps enough to save seeds again. perhaps enough to imagine a future that stretches farther than the next migration. You glance one final time toward the mountain. Its slopes fade slowly into gathering darkness. You cannot see the invisible minerals beneath your feet. You cannot know the slow geological processes unfolding deep underground. You cannot imagine the magma resting miles below the Earth's surface. Yet you live each day surrounded by their quiet work. The richest soil of the valley is not a miracle. It is the patient result of firestone rain time and countless unseen partnerships working together across generations beyond memory. You simply happen to arrive at the moment when all those ancient gifts have become ready to receive careful hands. And as night settles gently across the fertile valley, you begin to understand that the greatest secrets of the mountain are not hidden in its smoking summit. They are waiting silently beneath every step you take. Section 7. The valley greets you with gentle confidence. The morning mist no longer feels mysterious. It drifts across the meadows exactly as it has every dawn since your arrival, softening the edges of trees before quietly lifting into the warming air. The stream hums its familiar song over rounded stones while the fragrance of damp earth rises with the sunlight, carrying hints of mint wild onion and fresh pine needles. You breathe deeply. The scent already feels like home. Only a few seasons ago, your days followed an endless rhythm of movement. Campfires were extinguished before dawn, shelters were left behind, trails disappeared beneath fresh grass, and each new valley demanded that you begin learning everything again. Where the water flowed, which berries were safe, where wolves crossed, where deer rested. Life meant following nature wherever it decided to lead. Now something unexpected is happening. Nature has invited you to stay. No one speaks about it directly. There is no grand decision around the evening fire. Instead, tiny habits begin changing almost without notice. One family clears thorn bushes from beside the stream. Another returns to the same patch of edible roots every few days instead of searching farther away. Children recognize individual trees as if greeting old friends. The valley slowly becomes part of your memory, and you become part of the valley. One bright morning, while collecting seeds from tall wild grasses, you notice something curious. Several plants are growing unusually close together, far too close for chance. You kneel beside them. The stalks appear healthy, strong, almost identical in height, and the older gatherer joins you without speaking. He studies the cluster for a long moment before gently brushing loose soil aside with his fingers. Hidden beneath the leaves lie scattered seed husks from the previous season. The realization comes quietly. Last autumn someone must have shaken harvested grasses here. The forgotten seeds remained. Winter rains buried them. Spring awakened them. Now the earth has returned them many times over. No one planned it, yet everyone understands what happened. Historians believe discoveries like these gradually changed humanity's relationship with plants. Early cultivation probably emerged not through invention, but through observation. Ancient gatherers repeatedly noticed that useful species often returned where seeds had fallen, encouraging people to revisit, protect, and eventually influence those places. The transition happened slowly, perhaps so slowly that no single generation recognized it. You carefully loosen the surrounding soil. Several younger shoots receive a little extra space, not because anyone commands you, simply because it seems sensible. If crowded plants struggle, perhaps giving them room will help. The thought feels almost obvious. Thousands of years later, archaeologists would recognize such small choices as remarkable milestones in human history. To you, it is merely another day's work. The valley itself encourages these quiet experiments. Volcanic soil is forgiving. Soft digging sticks slide easily into the ground. Moisture remains beneath the surface even after warm afternoons. Young plants recover quickly from gentle disturbance. The landscape rewards curiosity instead of punishing it. That changes how people think. A young woman begins returning fallen berry branches upright after storms. An elderly man removes competing weeds around edible herbs. Children scatter leftover seeds while laughing beside the stream, delighted to watch birds chase after them. No one calls these activities farming. They still think like gatherers, yet their hands are beginning to shape the landscape instead of merely passing through it. Modern researchers describe this period as one of humanity's most fascinating transitions. Across different regions of the world, people experimented with wild plants in countless ways before fully domesticating them. Some communities remained gatherers for thousands of years while gently encouraging favored species. Others gradually moved toward organized cultivation. The exact timing differs greatly across continents, leaving historians to debate how often these changes occurred independently. The evidence grows richer every year. The complete story remains unfinished. As the afternoon sun climbs higher, your companions spread across the valley in small groups. Some gather nuts beneath towering oaks. Others harvest medicinal herbs near the springs. You join several elders walking toward an open meadow where edible bulbs grow beneath the dark earth. Halfway there, the oldest woman suddenly pauses. She points toward a patch of ground that looked barren only weeks earlier. Tiny green shoots have appeared, dozens of them. Each emerges from soil disturbed during last season's digging. The group smiles, not because the discovery is surprising anymore, because the pattern keeps repeating. The earth remembers. That simple thought settles comfortably in your mind. You begin wondering whether the land notices your presence just as you notice its generosity. The question has no answer. Perhaps it never will. The meadow hums with life. Honeybees drift lazily between purple flowers. Grasshoppers leap away from every careful step. A gentle wind ripples through the tall grasses, creating waves that move across the valley like water flowing over hidden stones. Everything seems connected. Every movement influences another. Anthropologists studying traditional foraging societies often observe that experienced gatherers rarely think of themselves as separate from their surroundings. Instead, they view humans, animals, plants, rivers, and seasons as parts of one living relationship. Whether prehistoric communities shared exactly the same perspective cannot be proven, but archaeological evidence suggests they understood their dependence upon healthy ecosystems remarkably well. Survival encourages humility. The afternoon passes peacefully. You fill your woven basket more slowly than before, not because food is scarce, because you leave plenty behind. Large plants remain rooted. Young shoots are untouched. Ripening fruits stayed on the branches for another week. This restraint surprises newcomers. Why not gather everything? The answer reveals itself every season. A valley stripped bare cannot feed anyone next year. Sustainability is a modern word. The practice is ancient. One curious mystery continues puzzling archaeologists today. At several early sites, evidence suggests people deliberately encourage certain edible species while allowing neighboring plants to flourish naturally. Researchers still disagree whether these choices reflected careful ecological understanding or simply practical habits developed through experience. The distinction may not matter. The forest benefited either way. Clouds drift lazily across the mountain during late afternoon. For a short time, the summit disappears behind soft white mist. When it reappears, sunlight catches the upper slopes, turning the dark rock warm shades of amber. The children stop working. They stare quietly. Even after months in the valley, the mountain remains magnificent. Beautiful things can still inspire caution. As evening approaches, everyone returns toward camp. Today's harvest fills fewer baskets than usual. Intentionally. Enough food remains growing throughout the valley to support another visit tomorrow. The decision requires no discussion. Shared experience has become shared wisdom. The fire crackles gently beneath the first evening stars. Warm smoke carries the sweet aroma of roasting bulbs and fresh herbs through the cooling air. Nearby children sort collected seeds into small woven pouches while listening to elders tell quiet stories of earlier journeys through distant forests. One little boy asks why they no longer travel every few days. The oldest hunter smiles before answering. "We still follow the land," he says softly. "It simply asks us to stay a little longer." No one laughs. The words feel true. You look across the dark valley where moonlight now rests upon rich volcanic fields stretching towards the silent mountain. The seeds you scattered today may sprout after winter rains. The roots you left behind may become next season's meal. The paths your feet have worn into the soft earth may guide children not yet born. Without realizing it, you and your companions have begun weaving yourselves into the landscape. Not as conquerors, not as owners, as careful partners. The wandering life has not ended. It has simply paused long enough for something entirely new to take root. And like every strong plant growing in the mountain's generous soil, that quiet change begins beneath the surface, hidden from sight, patiently preparing to shape the future one small season at a time. Section 8. The valley wakes before you do. Long before the first sunlight reaches the dark fields, faint sounds drift through the cool morning air. Somewhere beyond the stream, hooves press softly against damp ground. Leaves rustle with slow, deliberate movement. A distant stag gives a low echoing call that rolls gently through the forest before fading into silence. You remain still, listening. The camp has become quiet enough that even the smallest sounds carry meaning. You can tell the difference between rabbits moving through grass and wild pigs rooting beneath oak trees. You recognize the flutter of pigeons leaving their roosts before dawn. The rhythm of the valley has become familiar, almost like the breathing of a trusted companion. Then another sound reaches your ears. The steady tearing of grass. Large animals, very close. You ease carefully and step beyond the shelter. Morning mist still blankets the meadow. At first, you see only pale shapes drifting through silver fog. Then the shapes move. A small herd of red deer grazes peacefully less than 100 paces from camp. Their coats glow softly beneath the first light while their ears constantly turn toward every distant sound. Several young fawns stay close beside their mothers, occasionally lifting their heads before returning to the rich grasses beneath their feet. No panic, no hurried movement, only calm feeding. The older hunters exchange satisfied glances. The deer have returned again, exactly as they did several weeks earlier. Exactly as they did the previous season. Patterns begin quietly, then they become expectations. For wandering gatherers, following migrating animals often meant endless uncertainty. Herds crossed rivers, climbed mountains, or vanished beyond distant plains without warning. A successful hunt one week offered no promise for the next. This valley feels different. The animals keep coming back, not because they belong to anyone, because the land itself keeps inviting them. Modern wildlife biology explains this with surprising simplicity. Herbivores naturally seek landscapes where vegetation grows richer, more nutritious, and more consistently than surrounding regions. Volcanic soils often produce exactly those conditions. Better grasses mean healthier animals. Healthier animals produce stronger offspring. Over generations, familiar feeding grounds become deeply established within seasonal migration routes. The animals remember, even when people do not. You watch the herd spread slowly across the meadow. Their movements seem almost choreographed. Older females remain near the edges, constantly watching the forest. Younger deer wander more freely toward the center, where the grass grows tallest. A magnificent stag pauses beside a fallen tree, lifting his head to test the morning breeze before lowering it once again to feed. Nothing appears rushed. Abundance rarely requires haste. The hunters make no attempt to approach. Not today. There is no need. One successful hunt feeds a family for several days. Driving the entire herd away through unnecessary excitement would be foolish. Patience has become another form of wealth. Historians believe prehistoric hunters often possessed extraordinary knowledge of animal behavior, accumulated over countless generations. Rather than chasing prey randomly, they learned migration corridors, breeding seasons preferred, feeding grounds, and resting places with astonishing precision. Much of that understanding likely came through careful observation rather than dramatic hunts. Watching mattered, perhaps even more than running. As the sun climbs higher, mist slowly lifts from the valley floor. The deer continue grazing for another hour before drifting almost lazily toward the woodland. You notice something unexpected. Instead of disappearing completely, they stop beneath scattered trees growing along the forest edge. The grass there remains unusually green despite several warm days without rain. The volcanic soil holds enough moisture to keep fresh growth alive. The animals know exactly where to find it. You smile quietly. The mountain feeds everyone. A pair of wild boars soon emerge from dense undergrowth. Unlike the graceful deer, they move with determined confidence, pushing their snouts through loose volcanic earth in search of bulbs, insects, and edible roots. Their powerful shoulders shift the soil effortlessly, exposing fresh patches that birds quickly investigate for hidden worms. Without intending to, the boars help the forest. Disturbed soil allows scattered seeds to settle. Birds spread new plants. Rain finishes the work. Nature rarely wastes effort. Nearby, several children watch with fascinated curiosity. One little girl asks why the boars always choose certain places to dig. An elder kneels beside her. He scoops up a handful of dark earth and lets it fall slowly through his fingers. "The ground is kind here," he says softly. She nods as though the explanation answers everything. Perhaps it does. Science has given us more detailed answers yet. Kindness remains a beautiful description for fertile soil. Around midday, you accompany two experienced hunters toward a rocky overlook above the valley. They are not searching for immediate prey. They are learning. One hunter points toward narrow trails weaving through the meadow. At first, they appear random. Then your eyes begin recognizing a pattern. Nearly every path passes through the richest grasses. Every trail eventually reaches fresh water. Every route avoids steep volcanic slopes covered with loose stone. The animals have mapped the valley through generations of careful movement. Humans simply follow their wisdom. Anthropologists have long suggested that early people frequently relied upon animal behavior when exploring unfamiliar environments. Herds often revealed reliable water sources, seasonal food supplies, and safe travel corridors. Exactly how consciously ancient gatherers copied these movements remains debated, but archaeological sites repeatedly appear near productive landscapes favored by wildlife. Perhaps the greatest teachers had 4 legs, not 2. Clouds drift slowly across the mountain during the afternoon. Their shadows slide gently over forests and meadows, cooling the land for a few peaceful moments before sunlight returns. A golden eagle circles high overhead, Far below, rabbits dart between shrubs while countless insects fill the warm air with a steady, soothing chorus. The valley feels wonderfully alive. Not crowded, balanced. As you descend from the overlook, you discover fresh hoofprints pressed into damp soil beside the stream. Some are enormous, others belong to much smaller animals. The tracks overlap, crossing and recrossing each other in every direction. You kneel to study them. A hunter quietly points towards several deeper impressions. A pregnant female, moving slowly. Nearby lie tiny prints. Young fawns. The herd is growing. That means next year may bring even more animals. One curious mystery continues intriguing archaeologists studying prehistoric hunting sites. At several locations near ancient volcanic landscapes, animal remains appear with remarkable consistency over long periods. Researchers still debate whether this reflects unusually stable wildlife populations, repeated seasonal visits by human groups, or a combination of both. The bones cannot tell every story. The valley keeps some memories to itself. Late in the afternoon, your companions gather beside the stream to clean today's modest catch. One young deer provided enough meat without disturbing the rest of the herd. Nothing goes to waste. The hide will become clothing. The sinew will strengthen tools. Bones may serve as needles or fishing points. Even the smallest pieces find purpose. Abundance has not created carelessness. It has strengthened gratitude. As evening approaches, birds begin returning to their nests. The meadow slowly empties. One by one, the deer disappear into the sheltering forest, following the same quiet paths they travelled at sunrise. Tomorrow they will likely return, perhaps the next day as well. The certainty feels almost unbelievable. Around the evening, fire-roasted meat mingles with fragrant herbs gathered earlier in the week. Warm smoke curls upward beneath a sky slowly filling with stars, while children imitate the graceful movements of deer, making everyone smile without raising their voices. Laughter sounds softer here, perhaps because the valley encourages it. You glance toward the mountain standing silently beyond the dark fields. Its ancient eruptions once scattered fire across the land. Now those same slopes quietly nourish grasses. The grasses feed deer. The deer feed people. The people protect the valley that protects them. A circle has formed, not perfect, never permanent, yet beautifully complete. You settle beside the fading fire and listen to the peaceful sounds drifting across the night. An owl calls from deep within the trees. The stream continues its endless song. Far away, another herd begins moving through the moonlit meadow, trusting the rich earth beneath their hooves, just as your people have begun trusting it beneath their own feet. Without speaking, both species have accepted the same invitation. The mountain has offered life. For now, everyone answers by returning. To Section 9. The evening meal begins before sunset. Not because darkness brings danger, because the valley has become generous enough to allow unhurried evenings. The fire crackles softly at the center of your camp, its warm glow dancing across smooth volcanic stones arranged in a careful circle. Gentle smoke drifts upward, carrying the comforting aromas of roasting roots, fresh herbs, and slowly cooking meat. The scent lingers beneath the trees before disappearing into the cool mountain breeze. You settle onto a fat stone beside the fire. The day's work is finished. For now, children return with handfuls of berries gathered almost absent-mindedly during play. Older gatherers arrive carrying woven baskets filled with leafy greens, edible flowers and mushrooms collected along familiar forest paths. Hunters contribute only a modest portion of meat, knowing the valley itself already provides an astonishing variety of food. The meal feels abundant, not extravagant, simply complete. You notice something that would have seemed impossible only a year ago. No one appears hurried while eating. There is time to talk, time to laugh quietly, time to share stories without constantly scanning the horizon for tomorrow's survival. Food has changed more than hunger. It has changed the rhythm of human conversation. The oldest woman reaches into one basket and lifts a cluster of bright red berries. She passes them slowly around the circle. Each person tastes only a few. Sweetness spreads gently across your tongue. Behind it comes a faint earthy flavor, unlike berries gathered in distant valleys. Perhaps it is imagination. Perhaps the mountain truly leaves its signature upon everything growing here. Modern science tells us that soil composition can influence the flavor of fruits, herbs, and other edible plants by affecting mineral availability and plant metabolism. Exactly how noticeable those differences become varies widely, yet people throughout history have often recognized distinctive tastes associated with particular landscapes. Ancient gatherers needed no laboratory. Their memories served perfectly well. Nearby, another family prepares edible tubers beneath warm ash from the cooking fire. The roots soften gradually. Steam escapes through tiny cracks in their skins, carrying a rich, comforting aroma that blends with the fragrant sage. placed beneath them. One child eagerly reaches toward the fire. His mother gently laughs. Not yet. Patience improves many meals. Across the circle, several women grind wild grains between smooth volcanic stones. The steady rhythm fills the evening air. Stone against stone. Slow, steady, almost musical. The resulting flour mixes with water gathered from the spring until it forms a thick paste. Small cakes are placed upon hot stones beside glowing embers. Soon another wonderful smell joins the evening. Warm grain, lightly toasted, nutty and sweet. Historians widely believe that grinding stones became increasingly important as prehistoric communities relied more heavily upon seeds and grains. Many early examples have been discovered in regions where rich environments encouraged repeated seasonal occupation. Exactly how quickly these foods became dietary staples remains debated, but archaeological evidence clearly shows growing experimentation. People rarely stop improving successful ideas. The firelight flickers gently across familiar faces. One elder crushes aromatic leaves into a wooden bowl before mixing them with roasted roots. The herbs release sharp, refreshing scents. Mint, wild garlic, a hint of something almost citrus-like. The meal becomes richer with every handful. You realize that abundance has encouraged creativity. When survival depends entirely upon finding enough calories, there is little room for experimentation. When food becomes dependable, curiosity begins seasoning the pot. A young woman suddenly holds up an unusual mushroom. Its cap shines pale gold beneath the firelight. Everyone pauses. Silence settles around the circle. The oldest gatherer studies it carefully. She turns it slowly, smells it, examines the underside. Finally, she smiles and nods. Only then does conversation resume. Knowledge remains the most valuable ingredient at every meal. Anthropologists studying traditional foraging societies often emphasize that food knowledge extends far beyond recognizing edible species. Experienced gatherers understand where each plant grows best, which season produces the safest harvest, how weather affects flavor, and which preparation methods remove bitterness or toxins. Every successful meal reflects generations of memory, not luck. As darkness deepens, someone begins telling a familiar story. Long ago, before anyone's grandparents remembered, the mountain was said to have been hungry. It swallowed forests. It frightened animals. It covered the valleys with black dust. Then after many seasons of silence, green shoots appeared through the ash. Birds returned. Deer followed. People came last. The mountain learned generosity, the storyteller says softly. Several children smile. One little girl asks whether the mountain still becomes hungry. The elder gazes towards the dark silhouette rising beyond the trees. Sometimes, he answers. That is why we never forget to watch. No one speaks for several moments afterward. The fire quietly pops. An owl calls somewhere across the valley. The lesson needs no further explanation. Across many volcanic regions of the ancient world, later cultures developed myths describing mountains as living beings capable of both anger and kindness. Historians cannot determine whether stories like tonight's existed among much earlier gatherers, yet similar themes appear remarkably often across civilizations separated by oceans and centuries. Perhaps shared landscapes inspire shared imaginations. The mountain becomes more than stone. It becomes a neighbor. You glance toward the surrounding baskets. Every meal now contains remarkable variety. Roasted roots, wild grains, fresh berries, tender shoots, edible flowers, nuts, herbs, mushrooms, a small portion of venison. Even the colors seem richer than those remembered from older camps. Deep greens, warm browns, bright reds, golden grains, cream-colored roots. The meal reflects the valley itself, balanced, generous, alive. One curious mystery continues fascinating archaeologists. At several prehistoric sites located near volcanic landscapes, plant remains reveal unexpectedly diverse diets compared with neighboring regions. Researchers still debate whether richer soils directly encouraged this diversity or whether stable food supplies simply allowed people to spend more time experimenting with additional edible species. The answer may include both. Nature often rewards a patience with complexity. As the evening grows cooler, several people wrap themselves in woven cloaks while continuing quiet conversation. No one rushes indoors. The stars have become companions. The sky stretches endlessly above the sleeping mountain, scattered with countless bright lights reflected faintly in the nearby stream. Children gradually drift towards sleep beside their parents. Wonderboy still clutches a smooth volcanic stone collected earlier that afternoon. He insists it brings pleasant dreams. No one argues. Small comforts matter. The fire burns lower. Its warmth gently reaches your hands while cool night air brushes your face. The smell of roasted herbs still lingers pleasantly around the camp. Far beyond the trees, deer move quietly through moonlit grass. The valley continues feeding them. just as it fed you. I begin reflecting upon how strange this place truly is. The richest meals of your life exist because unimaginable fire once buried this land beneath burning ash. The sweetest berries grow from soil born through destruction. The fragrant herbs owe their strength to ancient eruptions. Even tonight's simple bread began inside rocks that melted far beneath the earth long before any human walked these valleys. You cannot explain these hidden connections. You do not need to. You simply taste them. And as the final embers glow softly beneath the stars, you understand that every peaceful meal shared around this quiet fire carries a silent gift from the mountain. Not given freely, never permanently, but generously enough that each evening ends with grateful hearts full baskets and the comforting hope that tomorrow's harvest will once again rise from the remarkable black earth beneath your feet. And Section 10, another season quietly arrives. You notice it first in the morning air. The cool breeze descending from the mountain carries a sharper edge, now crisp enough to raise small bumps across your arms before the warming sun reaches the valley floor. Leaves shimmer with fresh dew and the familiar stream moves a little more slowly between polished stones, reflecting a sky painted with pale shades of blue and gold. The valley is changing, not dramatically, gently. The berries ripen at different times, the grasses lean beneath heavier heads of seed. Mushrooms appear after cool nights while wild herbs release stronger fragrances beneath the afternoon sun. Everything follows its quiet calendar. So do the people. Your community no longer wanders without direction. Instead, each season brings familiar routines shaped by the mountain's remarkable generosity. Everyone knows when the edible bulbs become sweetest. Children recognize the first flowering shrubs announcing fruit not far behind. Hunters expect deer to gather along particular meadows once the grasses reach their fullest height. The valley has become predictable, and predictability attracts visitors. One clear morning, while gathering herbs near the western stream, you notice faint columns of smoke rising beyond a distant ridge. Not from the mountain, from campfires. Someone else has arrived. Word spreads quietly through your own camp. No one panics. No one celebrates. People simply become watchful. By midday, the newcomers appear. 3 families walk slowly into the valley, carrying woven baskets, rolled animal hides, bundles of wooden spears, and several curious children who stop frequently to stare at everything around them. Their clothing looks slightly different from yours. Their cloaks are sewn with unfamiliar stitching, and many carry stone tools shaped from pale grey rock instead of the dark volcanic stone found nearby. They have travelled far. You can see it in the dust covering their feet. The 2 groups stop several paces apart. Silence settles over the meadow. Birds continue singing. The stream continues flowing. Even the mountain seems to wait. Then the oldest woman from your camp steps forward holding a basket filled with fresh berries. She places it gently upon the ground before stepping back. No words, only a simple gesture. After a long pause, an elder from the visiting group kneels and places several beautifully crafted stone blades beside the berries. No bargaining follows, no raised voices. The exchange simply begins. Historians believe that productive landscapes frequently became natural meeting places for prehistoric communities. Long before organized markets existed, people likely exchanged useful materials, seasonal foods, tools, decorative objects, and practical knowledge whenever their journeys crossed. Fertile volcanic valleys would have offered especially attractive destinations because everyone needed food, and abundant food created opportunities for peaceful encounters. A full stomach encourages calm decisions. Throughout the afternoon, cautious curiosity gradually replaces uncertainty. The visiting children begin chasing dragonflies alongside your own. Adults compare digging sticks carved from different woods. Hunters examine each other's spear points with quiet admiration. You notice that one newcomer carries obsidian unlike any you have ever seen. The glossy black stone catches the sunlight like still water. Its edge appears astonishingly sharp. Modern archaeologists have discovered obsidian tools transported hundreds of miles from their volcanic sources. Because the stone fractures into incredibly sharp edges, it became one of prehistory's most prized materials. Mapping ancient obsidian has even allowed researchers to trace surprisingly extensive exchange networks across continents. The stone travelled, so did ideas. You gently hold one of the blades. It feels cool, smooth, almost delicate. The craftsman smiles and demonstrates how he shaped it using careful pressure rather than heavy strikes. You watch closely. Every movement matters. Knowledge changes hands as quietly as the tool itself. Nearby, several women compare woven baskets. One basket uses reeds for broad wetlands far to the south. Another incorporates flexible bark strips gathered in dense mountain forests. Each design solves the same problem differently. Soon everyone begins borrowing small ideas from one another. A stronger weaving pattern, a better knot, a more comfortable carrying strap. No one claims ownership. Useful ideas belong wherever they help people survive. Anthropologists often emphasize that innovation rarely spreads through conquest alone. More often, everyday encounters between neighboring communities quietly carry new techniques across enormous distances. A different basket today may become a familiar tradition several generations later. Progress seldom announces itself. It simply arrives. As the afternoon continues, the newcomers share stories of distant landscapes. One family crossed broad grasslands where rivers disappear beneath dry earth during summer. Another speaks of towering cliffs where enormous birds nest among impossible heights. A young hunter describes forests so dense that sunlight barely reaches the ground. The children listen with wide eyes. The world suddenly feels much larger than this valley. You realize something equally important. Everyone has come here, not because they were lost, because they had heard stories. Stories of black earth, stories of endless berries, stories of forests that seemed forever green. The mountain's reputation has traveled farther than anyone imagined. One curious question continues fascinating archaeologists today. How quickly did information spread between prehistoric communities? Without writing roads or permanent settlements, ideas still traveled remarkable distances. Historians continue debating exactly how these communication networks functioned, though archaeological discoveries increasingly suggest that human societies remained far more connected than once believed. People have always loved sharing remarkable places, especially hopeful ones. Toward evening, several hunters from both groups walk together toward a meadow where deer often graze. They carry different weapons. Some use lighter spears, others favor heavier shafts tipped with obsidian. Rather than competing, they quietly compare techniques. One hunter demonstrates how changing the spear's balance improves accuracy. Another explains why certain woods bend without breaking. No argument follows, only observation. The valley has become a classroom without walls. Back at camp, the fire grows larger than usual. Enough food exists to welcome guests. Roasted roots fill broad woven trays. Fresh herbs perfume the air. Wild grain cakes cook slowly upon heated stones, while venison simmers beside fragrant mushrooms gathered that morning. Laughter rises gently into the cooling evening. Still quiet, still respectful, but warmer now. Someone begins carving a small flute from hollowbird bone. Soon soft notes drift through the night, blending with the steady murmur of the stream and the distant chorus of frogs awakening near the marsh. Music requires spare time. Spare time requires dependable food. The connection seems obvious now. As darkness settles across the valley, both communities sit together beneath an endless sky filled with stars. Children from different families sleep side by side without remembering which camp they belong to that morning. Elders exchange quiet observations about changing seasons. Hunters trace unfamiliar constellations with patient fingers. The mountain watches over everyone equally. It asks no questions about where anyone came from, only whether they respect the land beneath their feet. You look around the fire and realize the valley has begun producing something almost as valuable as food. Connection. The rich volcanic soil nourishes more than forests and harvests. It nourishes trust, shared meals, shared discoveries, shared memories. The black earth has quietly become a crossroads where strangers arrive, carrying different tools, different stories, and different ways of seeing the world. They will eventually continue their journeys. Some will return next season, others may never come back. Yet every visitor leaves behind something invisible, a better idea, a useful technique, a memorable story, a friendship. And as the fire settles into glowing embers beneath the silent mountain, you begin to understand that the greatest harvest growing in this remarkable valley is not measured only in baskets of food. It is measured in the countless small exchanges that slowly weave distant people into a larger human story, one peaceful meeting beside fertile volcanic soil at a time. To Section 11. Morning arrives beneath a quiet sky. The visitors have remained for several days and the valley feels gently fuller than before. More footsteps follow the familiar trails. More laughter rises from the stream. More cooking fires send thin ribbons of smoke drifting lazily upward before dissolving into the cool mountain air. Yet the mountain itself remains unchanged. It watches, silent, patient. The first sunlight reaches its upper slopes long before touching the valley below, painting weathered rock with soft amber light. Wisps of white steam continue their slow climb toward the clouds just as they have every morning since your arrival. You have grown accustomed to the sight, not comfortable, simply familiar. There is an important difference. As breakfast finishes, several children wander toward the meadow carrying woven baskets for berries. Before they leave, the oldest woman quietly calls them back. She kneels beside the fire, Without speaking, she draws a simple shape into the ash with a smooth stick. A mountain, a winding stream, a cluster of trees. Then she places several small stones near the mountain's base. One by one she moves them farther away. The children watch carefully. No one interrupts. Finally, she brushes the drawing away with her hand. The lesson has already been given. Stay aware. Remember the mountain. Ancient societies often taught practical survival knowledge through stories, symbols, and repeated demonstrations rather than formal instruction. Before writing existed, memory itself became a precious tool. Every useful lesson had to remain vivid enough for children to remember many seasons later. Stories carried knowledge farther than commands. You begin noticing how often ordinary conversations become quiet lessons. An elder points toward birds circling unusually high above the valley. Another remarks that the spring water feels slightly colder today. Someone else mentions that certain flowers opened later than usual after a chilly night. None of these observations seem especially important alone. Together they create a habit. Notice everything. Dismiss nothing too quickly. Modern volcanologists rely upon instruments measuring earthquakes, gas emissions, ground movement, and temperature changes. Ancient gatherers possessed none of these tools. Instead, they gathered countless tiny observations, hoping that patterns emerging across many signs might reveal approaching danger. Sometimes they were right. Sometimes the mountain remained impossible to predict. By late morning, you accompany two elders toward a rocky hillside overlooking much of the valley. The climb feels familiar now. Your feet instinctively avoid loose volcanic stones while choosing firmer paths worn smooth by generations of deer. Halfway up the slope, one elder suddenly stops. He points towards several small cracks crossing the ground. They are narrow, hardly wider than a finger. Tiny plants continue growing between them. At first they seem unremarkable. Then he places his palm gently upon one exposed rock. You do the same. It feels warmer than expected, only slightly, barely noticeable. The elder nods thoughtfully before continuing uphill. No explanation follows. Historians still argue whether prehistoric communities recognized subtle geothermal changes before volcanic events or simply interpreted ordinary variations through experience. Some archaeological evidence hints that people occasionally abandoned settlements before eruptions occurred. Other sites reveal no such warning. The reality likely differed from one volcano to another. Nature seldom repeats herself perfectly. At the ridge, the valley spreads beneath you once again. Fields shimmer gently beneath the breeze. The stream winds through dark soil like polished silver. Children appear as tiny moving figures gathering berries near the forest edge. Everything looks peaceful. Yet from here the mountain feels much larger. Its broad shoulders dominate the Haiden. Thin steam escapes from several places instead of only one. You wonder whether that has always been true. Memory becomes strangely uncertain when watched closely. A raven lands upon a nearby branch. It tilts its head toward the summit before giving 3 deep calls. Then it flies away. One elder smiles softly. "The raven talks too much," he says. You smile as well. Gentle humor has become another way of living beside uncertainty. Across many later volcanic cultures, birds became important characters in traditional stories. Ravens, hawks, and crows often appeared as messengers between mountains and people. Historians cannot confidently trace such beliefs back to your era, yet birds naturally captured human attention because they often reached places people could not. Perhaps imagination simply followed observation. The afternoon unfolds peacefully. Visitors and longtime residents work side by side harvesting wild grains before autumn winds scatter these seeds. The rhythmic sound of stone sickles moving through tall grasses fills the warm air. Soft, steady, almost hypnotic. Nearby children gather fallen stalks left behind after the harvest. Nothing useful remains on the ground for long. One young girl suddenly asks why everyone always thanks the mountain before eating. The question surprises several adults. An elderly hunter thinks carefully before answering. "We do not thank the mountain because it is always gentle." He pauses. "We thank it because it allows us another day." Silence follows. The child nods slowly. The answer seems enough. As the afternoon shadows lengthen, several women begin drying herbs upon woven mats placed in warm sunlight. Bundles of mint, wild thyme, fragrant sage, medicinal flowers. The entire camp fills with wonderful aromas carried gently through the cooling air. The scent reminds everyone that another season is passing. Winter slowly approaches. Preparing now means resting later. One fascinating mystery continues, puzzling archaeologists. Many prehistoric communities living in productive environments invested surprising effort into preserving seasonal abundance through drying, smoking, grinding, and careful storage. Researchers still debate exactly how organized these systems became before permanent villages emerged. yet evidence increasingly suggests sophisticated planning long before agriculture fully developed. People planned for tomorrow, even while living close to nature. As evening settles over the valley, clouds gather briefly around the mountain summit. The peak disappears into soft grey mist. A low rumble echoes faintly through the distance. Not loud, not frightening, just deep enough to silence conversation for a moment. Everyone lifts their eyes. No one stands. No one runs. The sound fades as quickly as it arrived. Perhaps shifting rock. Perhaps distant thunder beyond unseen hills. Perhaps the mountain stretching after another quiet day. No one pretends to know. Living here has taught an important lesson. Confidence can become dangerous. Respect rarely does. The fire burns brightly after sunset. Visitors prepare to continue their journeys tomorrow, carrying baskets filled with dried berries, carefully wrapped seeds, medicinal herbs, and memories of this remarkable valley. Before sleep, the oldest woman gathers everyone together. She places one smooth volcanic stone into each child's hands. "Keep this," she whispers, "so you remember. Not the valley, not the food, not even the mountain itself. Remember to watch. Remember to listen. Remember that generous places deserve careful eyes." The children close their fingers around the warm stones. Tiny keepsakes, simple reminders. Above them, countless stars appear one by one across the darkening sky. The mountain stands beneath them in perfect silence, its ancient slopes holding stories older than memory itself. You settle beside the fading fire and realize that the greatest wisdom shared in this valley has never been about gathering more food or building stronger shelters. It has been about paying attention to the wind, to the birds, to the changing scent of the air, to the warmth beneath unfamiliar zones, to quiet sounds that others might ignore. Because every lesson learned beneath the shadow of the volcano begins the same way, not with certainty, with careful observation, and perhaps that patient habit passed gently from one generation to the next beside glowing campfires will become one of humanity's oldest and most valuable inheritances. The Section 12. The valley feels unusually still, not empty, not silent, simply attentive. The dawn arrives beneath a pale grey sky instead of the familiar golden sunrise. Thin clouds wrap themselves around the upper slopes of the mountain, hiding its summit behind a quiet curtain of mist. The stream continues its gentle conversation with the stone's birds still greet the morning, and the cool breeze carries the familiar fragrance of damp earth mixed with fresh herbs. Yet something is different. You cannot explain why. The feeling settles gently into your thoughts like a leaf drifting onto still water. The oldest hunter notices it too. Before anyone begins gathering food, he walks alone to the edge of the meadow where the mountain remains partially hidden behind clouds. He stands there for a long time, watching. The valley has taught everyone an important habit. Begin each day by greeting the mountain, not with words, with attention. The visitors departed yesterday carrying stories of rich black earth back toward distant valleys. Their laughter has faded into memory, leaving your own community wrapped once again in familiar routines. Children gather baskets. Hunters inspect their spears. Gatherers sharpen wooden digging sticks beside the fire. Life continues. It always does, even when uncertainty quietly joins the morning. Modern geologists know that active volcanoes constantly release information about what happens beneath the surface. Tiny earthquakes, changing groundwater, shifting gases, and subtle ground movement may all provide clues. Ancient people lacked instruments to detect such signals, yet many natural changes remained visible or audible to careful observers. The mountain was always speaking. The challenge lay in understanding its language. As you begin walking toward the western spring, something catches your attention. The water sounds different. Usually it bubbles steadily from beneath dark volcanic rock with cheerful consistency. Today the flow seems slightly stronger. Not dramatic, just enough to notice. You kneel beside the spring. Tiny bubbles continue rising through the crystal clear water. Perhaps there are a few more than yesterday. Perhaps not. Memory can become uncertain when it is searching for small differences. You cup cool water into your hands. The taste remains familiar, fresh, mineral-rich, clean. Nearby, several older women quietly exchange thoughtful glances. No one appears frightened, only observant. Historians still debate how accurately prehistoric communities interpreted changing springs near volcanic landscapes. Some archaeological evidence suggests that unusual water behavior occasionally influenced settlement decisions, while other discoveries reveal communities remaining despite similar changes. The relationship remains uncertain because each volcano behaves differently. Nature rarely follows simple rules. The morning continues peacefully. Children laugh while collecting ripe berries. Bees drift lazily between late-season flowers. Dragonflies skim across the surface of the stream. their delicate wings flashing silver beneath the filtered sunlight. Everything ordinary continues, yet every adult seems just a little more aware. One hunter pauses more often while listening to distant sounds. Another glances toward the summit whenever the clouds briefly separate. Observation has quietly become part of everyone's work, even while gathering your food. Around midday, warm sunlight finally breaks through the clouds. The mountain reappears. Its dark slopes glow softly beneath the returning light. Then you notice something unusual. A thin white plume rises from a place slightly lower than where steam usually escapes. It drifts upward before dissolving into the afternoon sky. You point quietly. Several others notice it too. No one rushes toward the camp. No one begins packing belongings. Instead, everyone simply watches. The plume remains, then gradually fades. Modern volcanologists understand that volcanic gas often escapes through different vents as underground pressure changes. New steam vents can appear temporarily without leading to an eruption. Ancient observers could never know which changes mattered most, making every unfamiliar sight worthy of quiet attention. Living beside uncertainty requires patience, not panic. An elderly woman kneels beside a patch of broad-leafed herbs growing near the stream. She gently touches several leaves. Then she smiles. Moisture still clings beneath them despite the warmer afternoon. The ground still drinks well, she says softly. The younger gatherers nod. The valley remains healthy. One sign alone never tells the entire story. As the day unfolds, small conversations drift naturally toward memories. One hunter remembers a season many years ago when birds suddenly abandoned another valley for several days. Nothing happened. An older woman recalls strange smells carried by the wind before a distant hillside collapsed after heavy rain. That had nothing to do with volcanoes at all. Experiences teaches caution. It also teaches humility. Sometimes the earth surprises everyone. One curious mystery continues fascinating archaeologists studying ancient volcanic settlements. At several locations buried beneath ash, evidence suggests residents had enough warning to carry away valuable possessions before disaster struck. At other sites, everyday objects remained exactly where they had been left, implying little or no preparation. Researchers continued debating whether warning signs varied dramatically or whether human decisions simply differed from place to place. The mountain gave no universal lesson. Each generation learned its own. By late afternoon, the air grows pleasantly cool. A gentle breeze moves through the forest, carrying the scent of cedar, wild mint, and distant rain. High above, a flock of swallows circles gracefully before settling upon branches overlooking the meadow. The children point excitedly. The oldest hunter watches them with quiet satisfaction. The birds still choose the valley, he murmurs. That seems important. Animals remain among the earliest teachers. As evening approaches, several families walk toward a broad clearing where the richest grasses grow. Not to gather food, simply to look. Golden sunlight stretches across the fields, turning every seedhead into glowing threads of amber. Beyond them, the mountain rises in complete semblance. Its enormous presence feels both comforting and humbling. One young boy asks a question that has quietly lived inside many minds. Can the mountain hear us? His grandmother smiles gently. I do not know, she answers, but we can always hear it. The child looks puzzled. There is nothing to hear. She closes her eyes. Listen longer. Everyone falls silent. For several moments, only ordinary sounds fill the valley. Wind moving through tall grass. The steady murmur of flowing water. Crickets beginning their evening chorus. Then almost beneath those familiar sounds comes something else. A faint whisper. Not a roar. Not thunder. A deep vibration so gentle that you feel it more than hear it. It lasts only a heartbeat, then disappears. No one speaks. Perhaps everyone imagined it. Perhaps no one did. Modern science confirms that volcanoes sometimes produce low-frequency vibrations too deep for easy human hearing. Whether prehistoric people consciously noticed such subtle signals remains unknown. Yet living beside one mountain for many seasons undoubtedly sharpened awareness of its smallest changes. The fire burns brightly after sunset. Dinner smells wonderfully comforting. Roasted roots, wild grain cakes, tender mushrooms, fragrant herbs. The familiar meal steadies everyone's thoughts. Conversation gradually returns. Children laugh again. Stories resume. The valley has not changed into a place of fear. It has simply reminded everyone that peace deserves attention as much as danger does. Before sleep, you walk alone to the edge of the meadow. Moonlight rests gently upon the black volcanic soil. The rich earth feels cool beneath your bare feet. You look toward the mountain one final time. Its summit is once again wrapped in quiet cloud. The white plume has vanished. The stars slowly emerge above the hidden peak. You realize that understanding the mountain has never meant predicting every tomorrow. It means accepting that some mysteries remain beyond human certainty. Still, each careful observation matters. Each remembered pattern matters. Each season quietly teaches another lesson. And beneath the calm night sky, surrounded by fertile fields born from ancient fire, you fall asleep knowing that wisdom is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the gentle discipline of watching, listening, and respecting a landscape that has always spoken in whispers instead of shouts. To Section 13. The next morning begins in perfect silence. Even before opening your eyes, you notice the difference. The forest has not stopped living. Birds still sing among the branches. The stream still murmurs over smooth volcanic stones. Leaves still sway gently beneath the mountain breeze. Yet the valley feels alert, as though every living creature has quietly agreed to pay closer attention. You sit beside the dying embers of last night's fire, while the eastern sky slowly brightens into pale shades of gold and rose. Cool air brushes softly across your face, carrying the familiar scent of damp soil mixed with cedar needles and crushed herbs. Then another fragrance reaches you, very faint, almost impossible to separate from the morning mist. A delicate trace of sulfur, not unpleasant, simply different. You glance toward the mountain. Its summit stands clear beneath the sunrise. A narrow ribbon of white steam rises steadily into the still air. Nothing dramatic. Nothing frightening, only another small detail joining the countless observations collected over many seasons. The oldest hunter notices the same thing. He says nothing. Instead, he quietly walks around the camp, speaking softly with each family. Today's gathering will begin earlier than usual. No one asks why. Everyone understands. When uncertainty quietly appears, preparation becomes wisdom, not fear. Breakfast is simple. Roasted roots from yesterday's harvest, a handful of dried berries, fresh spring water. Children eat while watching adults prepare woven baskets much larger than normal. Digging sticks are checked carefully. Stone blades are sharpened with slow practiced movements. Leather-carrying straps are tightened. The work feels deliberate, almost ceremonial. No one hurries. Haste often creates mistakes. The valley has taught patience. Soon your entire community walks toward the richest meadows together. Usually families spread across different parts of the forest during gathering days. Today everyone remains within easy calling distance. Just in case. The grasses shimmer beneath the early sunlight, their heavy seed heads bending gently with every passing breeze. Wild onions perfume the air whenever your feet brush their green leaves. Bees hum steadily among late-blooming flowers, moving from blossom to blossom with complete confidence. Nature continues its ordinary work. That feels comforting. You kneel beside a familiar patch of edible tubers. The loose volcanic soil opens easily beneath your digging stick. One root after another emerges whole and healthy. Larger than expected. The harvest is excellent, better than last season. You smile quietly. The mountain has once again been generous. Modern volcanologists often point out that active volcanic regions can remain productive for centuries between eruptions. Communities living nearby sometimes experience generations of remarkable fertility before any significant volcanic activity returns. Ancient people likely understood this through lived experience rather than scientific explanation. Most days rewarded patience. Only a few demanded urgent decision. As the morning progresses, baskets begin filling rapidly. Children gather fallen nuts beneath ancient oaks. Older women collect medicinal herbs growing beside cool springs. Hunters discover wild fruits ripening along the forest edge. Everywhere you look, food waits patiently to be gathered. The abundance feels almost endless. Endless. One young gatherer laughs softly. It is as though the valley wants us to stay forever. Several adults exchange quiet smiles. No one answers immediately. Finally, the oldest woman speaks. Nothing lasts forever. Her voice remains gentle, not gloomy, simply honest. The words settle peacefully into everyone's thoughts. The mountain has never promised permanence, only opportunity. Round midday, a small flock of cranes appears overhead. Their long wings catch the sunlight as they glide gracefully across the valley, before disappearing towards distant wetlands. Children wave excitedly. The elders watch thoughtfully. Seasonal birds often announce changing weather. Another reminder that time keeps the ball moving. You pause beside the western spring to refill your water pouch. The water still tastes wonderfully fresh, cold enough to numb your fingertips. Tiny bubbles continue rising lazily from beneath dark volcanic rock, exactly as they have for many weeks, or perhaps slightly faster. You cannot be certain. Memory grows slippery when measuring tiny changes. Historians still argue whether prehistoric communities recognized gradual environmental shifts over months, or relied more heavily upon immediate observations. The archaeological record cannot easily reveal how ancient people interpreted slow changes unfolding across many seasons, leaving scholars to reconstruct possibilities rather than certainties. Some mysteries refuse to become fossils. The afternoon sun warms the valley pleasantly. Shadows shorten. The rich fragrance of ripe grasses fills the air while insects sing continuously among the flowering plants. You and several companions begin harvesting unusually large patches of wild grain. Instead of taking only what seems necessary for the next few days, everyone gathers a little extra. No one announces the reason, yet every basket grows slightly heavier. Insurance against uncertainty, a wise habit in every age. Nearby children carefully collect fallen seeds missed during harvesting. One little boy proudly displays a basket nearly full. His grandmother kisses his forehead. "Tomorrow will thank you," she whispers. The phrase stays with you. Tomorrow will thank you. Preparation is often an invisible gift offered to the future. Late in the afternoon, while carrying another basket towards camp, you notice several deer standing perfectly still at the edge of the meadow. They are not feeding, not running, simply watching the mountain. The moment lasts only seconds. Then the herd lowers its heads and resumes grazing peacefully. Perhaps they heard something you did not. Perhaps a distant predator briefly caught their attention. Perhaps nothing unusual happened at all. Nature seldom explains herself. Modern researchers continue studying reports of unusual animal behavior before volcanic eruptions. Some observations appear remarkably persuasive while others fail careful scientific testing. No consistent pattern has yet explained every account, leaving the question intriguingly unresolved. Animals may notice more, or people may remember unusual behavior more clearly after dramatic events. The truth remains uncertain. By sunset, the camp overflows with food. Bundles of herbs hang from wooden frames beside the fire. Grains dry upon woven mats. Roots fill cool storage pits lined with leaves. Berries spread across flat stones to dry beneath the remaining warmth of the day. Every family has worked hard. Every family has quietly prepared. Dinner tastes especially satisfying. Warm grain cakes, roasted mushrooms, tender roots seasoned with fragrant herbs. Fresh berries gathered only hours earlier. Conversation drifts gently from one fire to another. No one speaks directly about leaving. No one speaks confidently about staying forever either. Living beneath the mountain has taught everyone to hold both possibilities at once: gratitude and readiness. As darkness settles across the valley, the stars appear slowly above the silent peak. The familiar ribbon of steam catches the moonlight before fading into the night sky. Children drift towards sleep wrapped in warm hides. Adults quietly inspect tomorrow's supplies one final time before resting, not because danger has arrived, because wisdom prefers preparation before necessity. You lie back upon this cool volcanic earth and gaze toward the mountain that has fed your people so generously. Its fertile slopes have transformed wandering gatherers into careful stewards. Its black soil has filled empty baskets beyond counting. Its forests have offered shelter, medicine, and countless peaceful evenings beneath the stars. Yet the mountain has also taught a lesson more valuable than abundance alone. Every blessing deserves respect. Every generous season deserves gratitude. Every quiet day deserves careful attention. And sometimes the wisest harvest is not the food you carry home. It is the habit of preparing while the sky remains calm, so that when tomorrow finally arrives with whatever story it chooses to tell, your hands and your heart are already ready to meet it. Then section 4. The seasons continue turning with quiet certainty. One harvest blends gently into the next, and before long the valley no longer belongs only to your small community. Paths once walked by deer now carry careful human footsteps. Familiar campsites appear beneath ancient trees each year. The smoke from cooking fires rises from the same clearings, then disappears into the mountain breeze before returning again with another season. The valley has become a place people remember, not simply because it is beautiful, because it keeps its promises. Morning arrives wrapped in cool air, scented with damp earth and flowering shrubs. Sunlight pours slowly across the black volcanic fields, awakening countless droplets of dew that shimmer like tiny stars scattered across every blade of grass. Bees already hum among blossoms, while distant cranes call from wetlands beyond the forest. Everything feels wonderfully alive. The richness of the land no longer surprises you. Instead, it shapes every expectation. When children grow hungry, someone walks into the forest with a basket. When herbs are needed, familiar paths lead directly to healthy patches. When hunters seek deer, they already know where the richest grasses will draw the herds. Abundance has become ordinary. That may be the most extraordinary change of all. You sometimes wonder whether people born here will ever understand how unusual this valley truly is. Perhaps not. Children often believe generous places are simply normal. Only travelers recognize miracles. As summer deepens, another gathering of distant families arrives. Then another, and another. The valley grows busier than ever before. Small camps appear beside neighboring streams, each carefully spaced to avoid exhausting nearby resources. Smoke rises from dozens of cooking fires every evening, curling lazily through the trees before fading beneath the evening sky. Despite the growing numbers, conflict remains surprisingly rare. There is room. There is food. There is enough. Historians believe exceptionally fertile volcanic landscapes often supported larger populations than surrounding regions. Places enriched by ancient eruptions could produce dependable supplies of edible plants, attract abundant wildlife, and sustain communities over remarkably long periods. Although exact population sizes remain uncertain, archaeological evidence repeatedly reveals dense occupation near volcanic soils across many parts of the ancient world. The mountain quietly feeds more people than anyone realizes. One afternoon, while walking with several elders, you climb a ridge overlooking nearly the entire valley. The view steals your breath. Where you once saw only wilderness, you now notice signs of human life woven gently into the landscape. Small clearings beside streams, well-worn gathering trails, storage pits hidden beneath shaded trees, drying racks standing in warm sunlight, children playing where berry bushes grow thickest. None of these changes overwhelm the valley. Instead, they seem to belong naturally within it. People have learned not to conquer this place. They have learned to cooperate with it. The oldest woman smiles quietly. She remembers when only your own footprints crossed these meadows. Now dozens of families share the same generous earth. The valley has grown into something larger than any single group. Anthropologists often observe that productive landscapes encourage repeated seasonal gatherings, allowing communities to strengthen social ties while sharing food knowledge and traditions. These regular meetings may have played an important role in building larger cultural networks long before permanent towns appeared. Food gathers people. People gather ideas. Ideas shape history. Near the ridge, you discover several unfamiliar digging sticks, carefully carved from hardwood unlike any tree growing in your valley. Someone from another region left them behind. Not forgotten. Shared. Nearby, a woven basket displays a new pattern that prevents seeds from slipping through tiny gaps. Within days, several local families begin copying the design. No one asks permission. No one objects. Knowledge spreads naturally. The valley has become a living exchange. Modern archaeologists have uncovered evidence that surprisingly distant communities sometimes shared similar tools despite living hundreds of miles apart. While direct contact cannot always be proven fertile, gathering places likely acted as stepping stones through which ideas gradually traveled across entire regions. Innovation rarely stays in one valley. It enjoys traveling. As afternoon sunlight warms the fields, children from different families gather beside the stream. They invent games using smooth volcanic stones polished by flowing water. Some compete to skip stones across the surface. Others build tiny circles resembling the cooking hearths used by their parents. Even play quietly reflects daily life. One little girl asks why the soil here is black while the earth near her distant home is pale brown. Several adults laugh softly. The question deserves an answer, yet no one truly knows. One elder gently scoops up a handful of volcanic earth. The mountain gives it, he says. The child accepts the explanation without hesitation. Sometimes the simplest answer carries enough truth for the moment. Today we understand that weathered volcanic ash slowly transforms into dark mineral-rich soil through thousands of years of physical and chemical change. Ancient communities observed only the finished masterpiece, not the invisible process unfolding beneath their feet. The earth worked patiently. People simply arrived at the right moment. Late in the afternoon, several travelers tell remarkable stories gathered from distant lands. One speaks of enormous mountains that spit glowing rivers of fire. Another describes valleys where hot water bursts from the ground without warning. A hunter recalls seeing strange rocks that floated briefly upon water before slowly sinking. You listen with fascination. Many of these stories sound unbelievable, yet everyone around the fire understands something important. The world is far larger than any one valley. The mountain before you belongs to a family of mountains stretching beyond the horizon. One curious question still fascinates historians. How much did prehistoric communities understand about distant volcanic regions? Similar tools, decorative stones, and cultural practices suggest surprisingly extensive connections, yet exactly how stories traveled across such vast distances remains uncertain. Perhaps each traveler carried a small piece of the answer. Evening approaches with gentle grace. Golden sunlight washes across endless green fields before fading into soft shades of amber and violet. Long shadows stretch beneath ancient trees where countless generations of deer continue grazing peacefully. Smoke rises from men campfires now. The aroma of roasting roots mingles with fresh herbs, toasted grains, and sweet berries warming beside glowing embers. The valley feels almost like a festival. Not loud, simply full. An elderly storyteller begins speaking after the meal. His voice remains calm enough that even the youngest children lean closer without effort. He tells of ancestors who wandered endlessly through hungry lands before discovering the Black Earth. He speaks of forests growing from ancient ash, of streams that never seemed to fail, of mountains that demanded respect instead of fear alone. As he speaks, you realize the story has quietly changed. Long ago, people told us stories about finding the valley. Now they tell stories about belonging to it. That difference matters. The stars appear one by one above the mountain. The familiar ribbon of steam glows faintly beneath the moon before dissolving into darkness. Children fall asleep beside warm fires while adults continue quiet conversations about next season's harvest, distant visitors, and new ideas carried from faraway places. You sit quietly at the edge of the camp, your hands resting upon the cool volcanic soil that has nourished so many lives. It is easy to think history is shaped only by great battles or mighty kings. Yet sitting here beneath the ancient mountain, another truth becomes beautifully clear. Sometimes history changes because the earth grows unusually generous, because families return to the same valley year after year, because strangers share tools beside a peaceful fire, because children born among fertile fields grow up believing cooperation is as natural as sunrise. The mountain never intended to build a crossroads. It simply created rich soil. Human hearts did the rest, and beneath the quiet stars surrounded by forests born from forgotten eruptions, you begin to understand that some of civilization's earliest foundations may have started not with walls or cities, but with a handful of remarkably fertile earth, patiently waiting for people wise enough to recognize its quiet invitation. Section 15. Autumn settles gently over the valley. The mornings arrive wrapped in silver mist, and every breath carries the crisp fragrance of cooling earth. Fallen leaves drift lazily from towering trees, landing upon the black volcanic soil without a sound. The stream still flows with quiet confidence, though its song has become softer now, as if preparing for the slower rhythm of approaching winter. The mountain stands exactly where it always has, steady, silent, watching. You have lived beneath its shadow through enough seasons to recognize familiar patterns. The first berries have disappeared, the grasses have already surrendered most of their seeds, the deer wear thicker coats, even the sunlight lingers lower across the horizon, painting the valley with long ribbons of warm amber before fading into cool evening blue. Life changes gently. Memory changes with it. One afternoon, while searching for edible mushrooms near the forest edge, you discover something unusual protruding from the earth. At first, it appears to be nothing more than a curved piece of wood, weathered, darkened, almost swallowed by the soil. Curiosity slows your steps. You kneel beside it and carefully brush away loose volcanic earth with your fingers. Gradually another shape appears, then another. It is the remains of an old fire circle. Smooth stones still rest exactly where someone arranged them many years ago. Inside the circle lie tiny fragments of charcoal preserved beneath layers of ash and soil. No one has used this place for a very long time, yet it somehow feels familiar. You imagine another family sitting here countless seasons before your own arrival. Children laughing beside the flames, roots roasting beneath hot stones, drifting upward with the evening smoke. The people are gone. Their quiet presence remains. Modern archaeologists often experience remarkably similar moments. A few scattered stones, a patch of ancient charcoal, or a handful of broken tools may be all that survives from lives once filled with conversation, laughter, and ordinary work. Entire generations can disappear until careful excavation gently invites them back into memory. History often whispers, it rarely shouts. You call several companions. Together you continue brushing away loose earth. More discoveries appear. Fragments of shaped bone, a worn grinding stone, pieces of cracked volcanic rock blackened by repeated heating. Everything rests exactly where someone left it. The valley has quietly preserved another family's story. Volcanic landscapes possess an unusual gift. Layers of ash can sometimes protect objects from weather animals and erosion with remarkable effectiveness. Although destructive during eruptions, volcanic deposits occasionally become extraordinary guardians of the past, sealing ordinary moments beneath the earth until thousands of years later. Fire destroys. Ash remembers. The oldest woman gently lifts the grinding stone into her hands. Its surface has become smooth through years of patient use. She slowly places her own palm upon the worn depression. Someone else's hands once rested here, perhaps hundreds of times. The stone carries invisible memories. No words are needed. One young child asks where the family went. The adults remain quiet. No one knows. Perhaps they simply followed migrating animals. Perhaps changing seasons led them elsewhere. Perhaps the mountain eventually asked them to leave. Historians still debate countless disappearances found in the archaeological record. Some settlements seem to have been abandoned peacefully over generations. Others vanished more suddenly. Climate, volcanic activity, changing resources, disease, or simple human choice may all have played different roles depending upon the place and time. Not every empty camp tells the same story. The afternoon passes with quiet fascination. No one removes many objects. Instead, everyone studies them carefully. A spear point shaped differently from those now used. A basket imprint preserved in hardened soil. Tiny seeds trapped inside old ash. The discoveries feel surprisingly ordinary. That makes them extraordinary. Great monuments reveal powerful leaders. Simple camps reveal everyday people. And everyday people are far easier to recognize. You smile while imagining someone complaining about a dull digging stick beside this very fire. Or a child refusing another helping of roasted roots. Human nature rarely changes as much as clothing or tools. One curious mystery continues fascinating archaeologists working near ancient volcanoes. Entire villages have occasionally been discovered, preserved beneath volcanic deposits with astonishing detail. Cooking vessels remain beside hearths. Food rests inside storage containers. Footprints cross hardened ash before disappearing forever. Researchers continue debating how quickly different communities escaped and what final decisions they faced. The ground preserves questions, not always answers. Later that afternoon, several children begin comparing the old campsite with your own. Their observations come quickly. Their fire was smaller. They placed stones differently, say. They stored food farther from the trees. Simple comments. Yet each reflects careful thinking. Perhaps the ancient family discovered something useful through experience. Perhaps your own community improved upon older ideas. Knowledge does not appear suddenly. It accumulates, one careful season after another. As the sun lowers toward the western hills, you wander alone through the surrounding woodland. Everywhere you look, the valley carries quiet signs of countless generations. An unusually straight path worn into the hillside. Several old nut trees growing together where people probably gathered year after year. A broad flat stone polished by a repeated grinding. Nothing dramatic. Everything meaningful. Anthropologists often describe landscapes like these as cultural environments rather than untouched wilderness. Long before formal agriculture transformed entire regions, repeated human activity subtly shaped forests, grasslands, and riverbanks in ways that accumulated across centuries. Nature remembers people. People remember nature. The relationship flows both ways. A gentle breeze stirs fallen leaves around your feet. They rustle softly across the volcanic soil before settling once more. The familiar scent of cedar mixes with cool earth and distant wood smoke drifting from the evening camp. You suddenly realize something remarkable. The valley has become layered, not only with ash, with lives. Every generation leaves behind tiny traces. A forgotten hearth, a worn path, a favorite gathering place beneath an old oak. None seem important alone. Together they become history. One fascinating discovery made by archaeologists is that microscopic traces sometimes survive long after visible objects disappear. Tiny grains of ancient pollen, fragments of charcoal and plant remains preserved in volcanic sediments, allow researchers to reconstruct forgotten forests, changing climates, and even seasonal activities. Historians continue refining these methods, and each new excavation reveals another small chapter from humanity's distant past. The smallest clues often tell the longest stories. Evening arrives quietly. The fire burns warmly once again. Its orange glow reflects across familiar faces gathered in a comfortable circle. Roasted mushrooms fill the air with rich earthy aromas. Fresh grain cakes bake slowly upon heated stones. Children eagerly retell the day's discoveries as though describing hidden treasure. In many ways they are. Not treasure made of gold, treasure made of memory. The oldest hunter gently places the ancient grinding stone beside your own before preparing the evening meal. For a brief moment, two generations separated by centuries sit side by side. One worn smooth by forgotten hands, the other beginning its own long journey. The sight fills you with quiet gratitude. You look toward the mountain silhouetted against a sky glowing with countless stars. Its ancient eruptions buried forests, its rich soil-fed generations, its gentle layers of ash-protected stories no one intended to preserve. Without realizing it, the mountain has become both provider and historian. It nourishes the living while quietly safeguarding the memories of those who came before. You settle beside the fading fire, your hand resting upon the cool volcanic earth, and you understand that every careful step across this valley carries you over invisible lives woven beneath the soil. Their voices are gone, their footprints have faded, yet the mountain remembers them all. And because it remembers, perhaps someday far beyond your own lifetime, someone else will kneel upon this same remarkable ground, brush away another handful of black earth and wonder gently about the people who once called this fertile valley home. The Section 60. Winter approaches quietly, not with violent storms or sudden frost, but through small changes that only patient eyes would notice. The mornings arrive later, shadows linger longer beneath the ancient trees. The mountain wears a pale crown of fresh snow high upon its distant slopes, while the fertile valley below remains green enough to feed both people and animals. The contrast feels almost magical. Cold above, life below. You stand beside the familiar stream before sunrise. Thin ribbons of mist drift lazily across the dark volcanic earth, and every breath carries the clean scent of damp stone mixed with cedar and fresh moss. The water feels colder against your fingertips now, yet it still flows freely beneath the quiet songs of waking birds. The valley continues its work. So do you. Several families spend the morning repairing shelters before winter rains become frequent. Fresh branches reinforce the roofs. Animal hides are tightened against wooden frames. Small cracks are sealed with clay gathered beside the stream. No one complains. Preparation has become another peaceful rhythm of life. The rich soil has given everyone enough time to think beyond tomorrow. That alone feels remarkable. As you carry armfuls of woven reeds toward your shelter, you notice the oldest woman walking slowly along the edge of the meadow. She is not gathering food. She is gathering stones. Small ones, smooth ones. Each comes from a different place within the valley. She studies every stone before placing it carefully into her basket. Curiosity follows her. By midday, everyone notices what she has begun. Near the center of camp, beside the oldest cooking fire, she arranges the stones into a wide circle upon the black earth. No one asks her to explain. Some quietly begin helping. One person adds another stone, then another. Children search for beautifully rounded rocks beside the stream. Hunters contribute larger pieces carried from nearby ridges. Without planning it, the entire community joins the work. By sunset, a broad circle surrounds the central fire. Simple, beautiful, complete. Anthropologists have long observed that communal gathering places often become the heart of traditional societies. Fire circles, meeting spaces, and ceremonial grounds appear across cultures separated by enormous distances and periods of time. Whether these places began through practical cooperation, spiritual meaning, or both remains a lively discussion among historians. Perhaps usefulness and symbolism simply grew together. The oldest hunter smiles as he studies the finished circle. "We will remember here," he says softly. Only 5 words. Yet everyone understands. The circle is not merely for warmth. It is becoming something more. As darkness falls, the community gathers around the newly completed stone ring. The fire burns steadily within its center, sending sparks gently upward into a sky overflowing with stars. Warm smoke carries the familiar fragrance of roasted roots, dried herbs, and toasted grain, while the cool mountain air brushes softly against your face. The oldest woman speaks first, not loudly, almost in a whisper. She tells the children about the first season your people entered the valley, about unfamiliar berries, about wondering whether the dark soil could truly be trusted, about sleeping lightly beneath the mountain's silent shadow. The younger children listen with wide eyes. To them, the valley has always been home. It is difficult to imagine a time before it. One by one, others begin adding their own memories. A hunter remembers the first herd of deer returning after winter. A gatherer recalls discovering unusually large roots beside the western spring. Another laughs while describing the day a curious wild boar stole an entire basket of mushrooms before anyone noticed. Gentle laughter circles the fire. Stories warm people almost as well as fames. Modern researchers believe oral tradition played an extraordinary role in preserving practical knowledge among prehistoric communities. Long before written records, careful storytelling transmitted information about dangerous places, seasonal changes, useful plants, and memorable events across countless generations. Every remembered story increased someone's chance of survival. Memory became inheritance. As the evening continues, a visitor from a neighboring valley quietly stands. He reaches into a leather pouch and removes a beautifully polished piece of obsidian. The stone reflects the firelight like still water beneath moonlight. He places it gently in the center of the stone circle. "A gift," he says, "for the mountain." No one laughs. No one questions the gesture. Instead, several others quietly add their own offerings. A carved antler needle, a particularly beautiful shell carried from a distant river, a handful of unusually large seed, a woven bracelet made from soft plant fibers. None possess great practical value. That is precisely why they are offered. Across later, volcanic cultures around the world, people often placed gifts near mountains, springs, or unusual rock formations. Historians continue debating how early these traditions emerged. Some scholars argue they developed alongside increasingly settled communities. Others believe expressions of gratitude toward powerful landscapes may stretch much farther into prehistory. The evidence remains incomplete. Human gratitude does not fossilize easily. You kneel beside the circle. Your hands hold nothing unusual, only a smooth stone collected during your first week in the valley. It fits perfectly in your palm. One side remains rough. The other has been polished by months of quiet handling. You place it gently beside the obsidian, not because you believe the mountain requires gifts, because the stone reminds you of uncertainty, of discovery, of every peaceful sunrise since arriving here. Some objects become memory itself. The fire burns lower. The stories continue. An elder recalls finding the ancient campsite buried beneath layers of ash. Another speaks of the first visitors who traded beautifully crafted baskets. Children ask endless questions. Did the deer always return? Was the mountain always this quiet? Did people ever become frightened enough to leave? The answers remain thoughtful, honest. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes no one truly knows. One curious mystery still fascinates archaeologists today. Ancient ceremonial spaces occasionally appear in places where practical activities also occurred. A single clearing may contain cooking fires, tool-making debris, food remains, and objects that seem intentionally placed for symbolic reasons. Researchers continue debating whether daily life and spiritual practice were ever truly separate for prehistoric communities. Perhaps they never needed to be. The valley itself feels sacred enough. Outside the circle, the forest settles into peaceful darkness. Owls begin their nightly hunting. Crickets continue their gentle chorus beneath fallen leaves. The stream whispers endlessly through polished volcanic stones. Far above the mountain remains motionless beneath a blanket of stars. Its summit glows faintly beneath fresh snow. Its fertile slopes disappear into shadow. The same mountain that once covered this valley with burning ash now watches quietly over people gathered in warmth and gratitude. The transformation feels astonishing, not only for the land. For you, months ago survival demanded constant movement. Now evenings are spent preserving memories, teaching children, sharing stories, offering thanks. Abundance has allowed something invisible to grow, a shared identity. Before sleeping, everyone quietly leaves the stone circle exactly as it stands. No one disturbs the small gifts resting beside the fire. Tomorrow they will remain there, perhaps through winter, perhaps much longer. You take one final look toward the mountain before wrapping yourself beneath warm hides. Its enormous silhouette blends gently into the night sky, neither threatening nor comforting, simply present as it has been for thousands of years. You close your eyes knowing that fertile soil feeds the body, shared memory feeds the heart, and somewhere between those two gifts, beneath the patient gaze of an ancient volcano, a community has begun creating traditions strong enough to outlive every individual gathered around tonight's quiet fire. Section 17. Winter finally loosens its quiet grip upon the valley. At first, the change is almost impossible to notice. The morning frost disappears a little earlier each day. Tiny green shoots begin pushing gently through the black volcanic earth. The stream, swollen by melting snow from the mountain above, sings more loudly than it has in many months. Birds return, one flock at a time, filling the forest with familiar voices that had faded into the silence of winter. Everything feels as though it is waking. So are you. The first warm morning arrives beneath a sky of flawless blue. Sunlight spreads slowly across the valley, illuminating every meadow, every ancient tree, every winding footpath your people have walked for countless seasons. The dark soil glistens with fresh moisture, promising another year of remarkable abundance. Children race excitedly through fields where the first wildflowers have begun to bloom. Hunters inspect old trails softened by winter rain. Gatherers gently touch young leaves, already recognizing which plants will soon become food medicine or weaving fibers. Another season begins, yet beneath the familiar rhythm of spring, another conversation quietly grows. It begins with a single observation. The valley feels more crowded than ever before. New families have arrived during the winter. Others returned earlier than expected. Neighboring groups now camp beside streams that once belonged only to birds and deer. No one complains, but everyone notices. Abundance attracts people. That is one of nature's oldest patterns. As you walk toward the western meadow, you pass several children you have never seen before. They laugh while chasing butterflies between flowering shrubs. Nearby unfamiliar hunters greet you warmly before continuing toward the forest. The valley no longer belongs only to those who first discovered its gifts. It has become a destination. Modern archaeologists often observe that especially productive landscapes gradually attracted larger seasonal populations over time. Rather than remaining isolated, successful resource-rich areas frequently became gathering places where different communities exchanged food technology, marriage partners, stories, and practical knowledge. Such repeated gatherings may have laid important foundations for increasingly complex human societies. Prosperity has a way of inviting company. One afternoon the elders gather beneath the oldest oak tree overlooking the valley. You join them quietly. No one speaks immediately. The breeze carries the sweet fragrance of blossoms across the hillside while bees drift lazily between flowers. Everything appears peaceful. Finally, the oldest hunter breaks the silence. There are more feet. Everyone smiles softly. Simple words, obvious words, yet they carry unexpected weight. More people mean more hands gathering roots, more baskets filling with grain, more fires burning each evening, more children growing into adults who will one day seek homes of their own. The valley remains generous, but no place is limitless. One elder traces circles in the volcanic soil with a smooth stick. The mountain gives. He pauses. We must also leave something behind. His meaning becomes clear. Take carefully. Harvest wisely. Allow tomorrow to exist. Historians continue debating how prehistoric communities managed increasingly valuable resources before formal agriculture became widespread. Some evidence suggests careful seasonal movement prevented overharvesting, while other discoveries hint at early traditions regulating access to especially productive gathering grounds. The details remain uncertain, but many researchers believe cooperation became increasingly necessary as populations grew. Success creates new responsibilities. The following morning, something unusual happens. Instead of gathering every edible plant in one meadow, several experienced women deliberately leave healthy patches untouched. Young gatherers look puzzled. There is still plenty, one says. There is, the oldest woman replies, and there should still be plenty after we are gone. The lesson requires no further explanation. Nearby hunters choose not to pursue a young deer standing beside its mother. There will be other opportunities. Patience often provides more than urgency. The valley has begun teaching restraint. Anthropologists have noted that many traditional foraging societies possess sophisticated ecological knowledge, passed through observations or rather than written rules. Decisions about when not to harvest could be just as important as knowing when to gather, helping ensure resources remained available across many seasons. Wisdom sometimes looks like leaving something untouched. As spring deepens, another important discussion quietly emerges. Several younger families wonder whether nearby valleys might contain similar fertile soil. No one knows. No one has searched very far. The mountain has been so generous that few people ever felt a reason to leave. Until now, one evening while gathered around the familiar stone circle, a young hunter speaks carefully. What if the black earth continues beyond the next mountains? Silence follows. Not uncomfortable silence. Thoughtful silence. The oldest woman studies the glowing fire before answering. It may, and if it does, then others should know. Her voice remains calm, almost hopeful. The conversation continues long into the evening. Perhaps small groups could explore neighboring valleys during the coming summer. Not because this valley has failed, because knowledge itself deserves to travel. Modern researchers believe prehistoric exploration never truly stopped, even after communities discovered exceptionally favorable environments. Curiosity, population growth, changing climates, and expanding social networks likely encouraged people to investigate distant landscapes, continually carrying both practical knowledge and cultural traditions with them. Discovery becomes a habit, not a destination. Several weeks later, preparations quietly begin. A handful of experienced travelers gather supplies. Extra baskets, stone blades, water containers, dried roots, medicinal herbs. No one speaks of abandoning the valley. Instead, they speak of learning from the world beyond it. Children eagerly volunteer to join. Parents laugh gently, perhaps another year. First, they must learn every lesson this valley still has to offer. One little girl kneels beside the black soil before the departing group leaves. She presses both hands gently into the earth. "Come back," she whispers. Everyone smiles. The mountain has become something more than a place. It has become home. One fascinating mystery continues intriguing archaeologists studying ancient migration. Communities often carried surprisingly similar stoneworking techniques, basket designs, and food preparation methods across vast distances. Whether these traditions spread through exploration, seasonal gatherings, or gradual family movement remains difficult to determine with certainty. Ideas often travel farther than people. The morning of departure arrives beneath clear skies. Mist rises gently from the valley, while sunlight paints the volcanic slopes in soft shades of gold. Everyone gathers beside the familiar stone circle, not for ceremony, simply to say farewell. The travelers carry only what they need, nothing excessive. The oldest hunter walks with them as far as the ridge overlooking the valley. There he stops. Below, the fertile fields stretch peacefully toward the distant forest. Smoke curls gently upward from cooking fires. Children laugh beside the stream. Deer graze calmly among the grasses. Everything feels exactly as it should. "You are not leaving the mountain," he says quietly. "You are carrying it." The younger travelers look puzzled. Her smiles, "Not the stone, the lesson. Respect the earth. Observe carefully. Take only what is needed. Leave enough for tomorrow. Share what you learn." Those lessons weigh nothing, yet they are the most valuable things anyone can carry. The travelers disappear slowly beyond the distant ridge. For a long time, everyone watches the empty path. The valley suddenly feels larger and quieter. You remain standing beside the old hunter until the last figures vanish into the morning light. Neither of you feels sadness, only gratitude. Some journeys begin because people are hungry. Others begin because people are hopeful. As you return towards the fertile fields, your feet sink gently into the familiar volcanic soil that has nourished your people through so many peaceful seasons. You realize that the mountain has given your community far more than food. It has taught a way of seeing the world, to notice small changes, to honor abundance without wasting it, to remember those who came before, to prepare thoughtfully for those yet to come. And now, perhaps for the first time, those quiet lessons are beginning to travel beyond the valley itself, carried not by the wind or the rivers, but by human hearts setting out across the horizon in search of new landscapes where the wisdom born from ancient fire might one day take root once again. Section TT. Spring quietly matures into early summer. The valley feels both familiar and strangely incomplete. Each morning you still wake to the gentle murmur of the stream flowing across smooth volcanic stones. Birds greet the sunrise from the branches of ancient oaks. Warm light spreads slowly across the black soil, awakening fields of grasses that ripple like green waves beneath the mountain breeze. Everything appears unchanged, yet every so often your eyes drift toward the northern ridge. The path where the explorers disappeared remains empty. For now, life continues. It always does. The remaining families gather roots beside the western spring. Hunters quietly follow deer trails through the forest. Children laugh while chasing butterflies between patches of flowering herbs. The mountain continues feeding everyone with the same patient generosity. But now another lesson quietly unfolds. Waiting. Waiting, you discover, is also part of survival. The oldest woman often reminds the children that the earth works according to its own seasons. Seas do not hurry. Trees do not rush. Neither should people. Modern archaeologists believe many prehistoric journeys likely lasted far longer than modern travelers might imagine. Small groups moved cautiously, stopping to gather food, study unfamiliar landscapes, avoid dangerous terrain, and establish peaceful contact with neighboring communities. Exploration was rarely a straight path from one destination to another. Distance was measured in patience rather than miles. Several weeks pass peacefully. The valley becomes warmer. Wildflowers blanket the meadows in brilliant colors of yellow, purple, and white. Bees hum constantly among blossoms while dragonflies skim across the surface of quiet ponds. The rich volcanic earth continues producing remarkable abundance. The younger children have begun asking fewer questions about the travelers. Daily life gently fills every empty space. Then one quiet afternoon, while gathering herbs along the eastern hillside, a young girl suddenly stops. She raises one hand toward the distant ridge. Someone is coming. Everyone turns. At first you see nothing. Then tiny figures slowly emerge against the bright summer sky. 1, 3, 5. Soon the entire group becomes visible. The travelers have returned. Not hurried, not exhausted, simply weathered by distance. The entire valley seems to awaken at once. Children race towards the approaching figures. Adults smile with unmistakable relief. Even the oldest hunter, who rarely shows strong emotion, allows himself a quiet laugh. The travelers carry more than their original baskets. Across their shoulders hang unfamiliar woven bags, bundles of strange plants, new stone tools, pieces of brightly colored rock unlike any found in your valley. They also carry stories, many stories. That evening, the entire community gathers beside the familiar stone circle. The fire burns brightly beneath a sky glowing with countless stars. Everyone waits patiently. Finally, the youngest explorer begins speaking. There are other valleys. His voice carries both excitement and humility. They are not like this one. He smiles towards the mountain, but they are beautiful. Another traveler carefully unwraps several unfamiliar seeds, longer than those growing here, darker, smoother. No one has seen them before. The oldest woman turns them slowly between her fingers. Will they grow? The traveler nods. We think they will. No one can know for certain. Still, hope settles gently around the fire. Anthropologists believe prehistoric communities gradually exchanged plant varieties across surprisingly large regions. While the earliest cultivation developed independently in several parts of the world, the movement of useful species often depended upon human travel, curiosity, and repeated social contact between neighboring groups. Every journey carried possibilities hidden inside a handful of seeds. The stories continue late into the evening. One valley contained tall reeds perfect for weaving stronger baskets. Another offered unusually hard stone ideal for making sharper blades. Farther beyond, wide grasslands stretched farther than anyone could walk in several days. The travellers also speak of another mountain, not sleeping, living. Smoke drifted continuously from its summit. Occasionally glowing light appeared after sunset. No one approached too closely. Respect guided every decision. Modern volcanologists recognize that volcanic regions often exist in clusters rather than isolation. Ancient travelers moving across such landscapes may have encountered mountains displaying very different levels of activity, gradually building practical knowledge through careful observation rather than scientific explanation. Each mountain possessed its own personality. Each deserved respect. The following morning, everyone walks together toward the western meadow. The travelers choose a small patch of rich volcanic soil untouched by earlier harvesting. Carefully, almost ceremonially, they press several unfamiliar seeds into the dark earth. Children gather close enough to watch every movement. One little boy asks the obvious question, "Will they become food?" The youngest explorer smiles. If the valley welcomes them, the answer satisfies everyone. Nothing more needs to be said. Nature always keeps the final word. Historians continue debating how frequently prehistoric communities experimented with unfamiliar plants introduced from distant regions. Archaeological evidence occasionally reveals species appearing outside their likely places of origin, suggesting careful human movement. Long before formal agriculture became widespread, the exact pathways, however, remain uncertain. Knowledge rarely traveled alone. It often carried living companions. Summer unfolds peacefully. The newly planted seeds receive careful attention, not excessive attention, only quiet observation. Children eagerly inspect the small patch each morning before breakfast. Nothing appears. Then after many days, tiny green shoots finally break through the volcanic soil. Soft, delicate, hopeful. Excited whispers spread across the camp. The seedlings survive. Perhaps they belong here after all. The oldest woman kneels beside them. She says nothing for a long moment. Finally, she places one gentle hand upon the warm earth. The mountain is listening. Whether she speaks literally or poetically hardly matters. Everyone understands. The valley has accepted another gift. One fascinating mystery continues occupying archaeologists today. Ancient volcanic settlements occasionally reveal plant remains originating from surprisingly distant environments. Researchers still debate whether these species arrived through direct migration, gradual exchange between neighboring groups, or repeated seasonal gatherings extending across generations. Sometimes a single seed carries the story of hundreds of journeys. As midsummer arrives, the travelers continue teaching everything they learned. New weaving methods, safer river crossings, different ways of drying herbs, unfamiliar songs remembered from distant evenings beside strangers' fires. The children absorb every lesson with astonishing speed. The valley itself begins changing, not dramatically, almost invisibly. A new basket pattern appears beside an old one. Different stone tools rest together on the same work mat. New seeds to grow beside familiar grasses. Traditions quietly expand without replacing what came before. Cultural historians often note that societies rarely develop through complete replacement of older traditions. More often, new ideas blend gradually with familiar practices, creating cultures that preserve memory while remaining open to thoughtful change. Growth does not require forgetting. It requires balance. One evening, as the sun sinks behind distant hills, you climb alone to the ridge where months earlier you watched the travelers disappear. The valley stretches peacefully below. Smoke rises gently from evening fires. Children laugh beside the stream. Deer continue grazing in the rich meadows. Near the western field, the unfamiliar seedlings catch the final golden light of the day. Tiny, fragile, alive. You look beyond the horizon where countless unseen valleys still wait. Some surely contain fertile soil. Others perhaps do not. Some mountains sleep. Others breathe smoke into the sky. Every landscape holds lessons no one has learned yet. The thought feels strangely comforting. You no longer believe your valley is the center of the world, nor do you believe it is merely one place among many. It is something quieter, a beginning. The mountain did not ask your people to remain forever. Neither did it ask them to leave. Instead, through fertile earth, generous harvests, and patient seasons, it offered something even more enduring, a way of understanding the world. Observe before acting, share before hoarding, respect before taking, learn before judging, carry wisdom farther than your own footsteps. As twilight gently settles across the volcanic fields, you breathe deeply the familiar scent of rich black soil warming beneath the fading sun. The earth beneath your feet has been shaped by ancient fire. The future growing from it will be shaped by human choices. And somewhere beyond the distant mountains, another traveller may already be discovering a quiet valley, kneeling to touch unexpectedly fertile earth and beginning a story that echoes your own, another chapter in the long, patient conversation between humanity and the living landscapes that have guided your journey since the first dawn beneath the shadow of the mountain. Now, Section 19. Many years have passed, not in a rush, not in great leaps, simply one quiet season after another. The children who once chased butterflies across the volcanic meadows now guide children of their own along the same winding paths. The young explorers who first crossed distant ridges have become thoughtful elders whose hair has slowly turned the colour of winter ash. New shelters have replaced old ones. Fresh footpaths have formed while older trails have softened beneath grass. The mountain remains, exactly as it always has. Its summit still greets the morning with the thin ribbons of cloud. Its slopes still feed cool streams that wind gently through forests and fertile fields. The rich black soil continues rewarding patient hands just as it did when you first arrived beneath its towering shadow. The valley has changed. The mountain has endured. You walk slowly through the familiar landscape at sunrise. Morning mist clings low across the meadows, while golden light filters gently through ancient oaks. Every breath carries the comforting fragrance of damp volcanic earth, wild mint and fresh grain ripening beneath the summer sun. The valley feels deeply lived in. Not crowded, not wild, balanced. Near the western meadow, children kneel beside rows of familiar plants growing alongside descendants of the unusual seeds brought home many years earlier. To them, these plants have always belonged together. They cannot imagine a time when they did not. That realization makes you smile. The most successful ideas eventually stop feeling new. They simply become tradition. Modern archaeologists often recognize this challenge when studying prehistoric societies. Once an innovation has existed for several generations, it becomes difficult to identify the moment it first appeared. New customs quietly settle into daily life until they seem as ancient as the landscape itself. Success often becomes invisible. As you continue walking, you pass the old stone circle. Time has gently transformed it. Grass now grows between many of the carefully placed rocks. Several have sunk deeper into the earth. Others have become polished smooth by the countless hands resting upon them during evenings of storytelling. The gifts left there over many seasons have disappeared. Some returned naturally to the soil. Others were carried away by children who grew into adults. The circle remains. Its meaning has only deepened. This evening, another gathering will take place. Families from neighbouring valleys have already begun arriving throughout the day. They bring woven baskets unlike any made here. Beautiful shells collected from distant rivers. Colourful feathers from birds that never visit your valley. Smooth stones shaped by faraway coastlines. Every visitor also carries stories. Stories have become as valuable as food. Anthropologists believe seasonal gatherings likely strengthened relationships between neighbouring communities while encouraging the exchange of practical knowledge, marriage partnerships, artistic traditions, and environmental experience. These quiet connections may have helped prehistoric societies remain remarkably resilient despite changing climates and unpredictable landscapes. No community truly thrives alone. Near midday, several children ask permission to accompany you toward the old campsite discovered years ago beneath layers of volcanic ash. The path feels wonderfully familiar. Fern fronds brush gently against your legs while birds sing from hidden branches overhead. Eventually, the ancient fire circle comes into view. It has changed very little. The charcoal still rests beneath protective layers of soil. The grinding stone remains exactly where it was respectfully returned after being studied. The children kneel beside it with wide eyes. One little girl carefully traces the smooth depression worn into its surface. Who made this? You pause. The answer is both simple and impossible. A family. She nods thoughtfully. Like ours. You smile. Very much like ours. The child studies the stone again. They are gone. Yes. She remains quiet for a long moment before asking another question. Will someone find our fire someday? The forest grows wonderfully still. You look around at the familiar clearing. Sunlight dances gently across weathered stones while leaves drift softly through the warm afternoon air. Perhaps, perhaps not. I hope they do. The child seems surprised. Why? So they will know we cared for this place. She smiles without fully understanding. Perhaps one day she will. Modern archaeology continues revealing how surprisingly ordinary ancient lives truly were. Excavations often uncover children's footprints beside adult tracks, cooking fires surrounded by family tools and simple objects repaired repeatedly rather than discarded. Such discoveries remind researchers that the past was filled not only with extraordinary events, but with countless ordinary mornings remarkably similar to our own. History lives inside everyday moments, not only great ones. On the walk back toward camp, you notice something quietly remarkable. Enormous trees now shade parts of the valley, where open grass once stretched toward the stream. You remember when they were only small saplings. Now birds build nests high among their branches. Their roots reach deeply into volcanic soil enriched long before they ever existed. Time has become visible, not in years, in forests. Late that afternoon, preparations begin for the evening gathering. Fresh grain cakes bake slowly upon heated stones. Bundles of fragrant herbs hang above gentle fires. Roasted roots release, comforting aromas into the cooling air while berries collected earlier in the day fill carefully woven bowls. Children arrange smooth volcanic stones around the great fire circle exactly as generations before them once did. No one remembers who first taught them. They simply know. That is how traditions survive. One fascinating mystery still occupies historians when studying prehistoric communities. Cultural traditions sometimes remain recognizable across hundreds or even thousands of years, despite enormous environmental changes. Whether this remarkable continuity depended primarily upon family teaching, repeated seasonal gatherings, or shared sacred landscapes remains difficult to determine with certainty. Memory survives in many forms. As darkness settles across the valley, the gathering begins. Voices from many neighboring communities blend together beneath the stars. Songs unfamiliar to your childhood now sound completely natural. New rhythms accompany old melodies. Different languages share laughter around the same warm fire. Children born in distant valleys play together without noticing whose grandparents came from where. The mountain watches silently above them all. The oldest storyteller rises slowly. His voice has become softer with age, yet everyone leans forward to listen. He does not begin with the mountain, nor with the valley. Instead, he begins with a handful of blacksand soil. He lifts it gently into the firelight. This, he says quietly, looks like ordinary earth. He opens his fingers. The dark grain slips slowly back to the ground. But inside it, he pauses. Countless lives. No one interrupts. He speaks of forests growing after forgotten eruptions, of wandering families following hungry seasons, of children learning which berries healed and which harmed, of strangers becoming friends beside evening fires, of seeds carried across mountains, of stories traveling farther than any single person could walk. The black soil beneath everyone's feet suddenly feels much deeper than before. Not only rich with minerals, rich with memory. You glance toward the volcano rising peacefully beyond the moonlit valley. Long ago, rivers of molten rock once flowed where children now laugh. Ash once buried forests where grain now ripens. Destruction eventually became nourishment. Loss slowly became possibility. Modern geologists understand that volcanic landscapes evolve across unimaginably long stretches of time. Fresh lava cools into rock. Rock slowly weathers into fertile soil. Plants arrive, animals follow, people eventually discover remarkable opportunities created by processes that began thousands of years earlier. Human history often begins long before humans arrive. The fire gradually burns slower. One family begins preparing for tomorrow's journey home. Another discusses returning after the autumn harvest. Children exhausted by the laughter and games drift peacefully to sleep wrapped in warm hides beneath the stars. The valley grows quiet once again. You remain beside the fading embers a little longer. Your hand rests gently upon the familiar volcanic earth that has shaped so much of your life. When you first arrived here, you believed the mountain's greatest gift was food. Later you believed it was safety, then knowledge, then community. Now after so many seasons, you understand that its greatest gift was something even gentler. Perspective. The mountain taught you that no generation truly begins alone. Every harvest grows from forgotten season. Every tradition rests upon older hands. Every path follows footprints almost erased by time. And every quiet act of kindness, sharing seeds, telling stories, protecting the land, welcoming strangers becomes another invisible layer beneath the feet of those who will someday walk this valley long after your own footprints have faded into the patient, fertile earth. Section 20. Night settles gently over the valley. The stars appear one by one, scattered across the sky like tiny lanterns patiently waiting above the ancient mountain. The familiar stream continues its endless journey through the black, volcanic earth, its quiet song unchanged despite the countless generations who have paused to listen beside its banks. A cool breeze moves softly through the trees. The fire burns lower. Children sleep peacefully beneath warm hides while the last conversations of the evening fade into comfortable silence. You sit alone for a while, not because you are lonely, because the valley has taught you that some thoughts grow best in stillness. The mountain rises beyond the darkness exactly as it has for thousands upon thousands of years. It does not celebrate. It does not mourn. It simply remains. You remember your first morning here, the uncertainty, the cautious footsteps, the unfamiliar black earth beneath your hands, the quiet question that lived inside every heart. Could this strange place truly sustain life? Season after season has answered that question. Yes. Again and again. Yes. Yet the mountain offered something deeper than survival. It quietly transformed the way people understood the world. You look across the sleeping valley. The stone circle still rests near the center of camp. The ancient campsite remains preserved beneath protective layers of ash. The fields hold familiar plants growing beside those once carried home from distant valleys. Children dream beneath roofs, repaired by hands that learned from parents, grandparents, and strangers who became friends. Nothing here appeared all at once. Everything grew patiently, just like the soil itself. Modern Earth scientists now understand why volcanic landscapes became some of the most fertile environments on our planet. Minerals released through ancient eruptions slowly weather into soils, rich in phosphorus, potassium, iron, magnesium, and countless other nutrients that encourage extraordinary plant growth. The process requires immense stretches of time, often thousands of years, before the land reaches its greatest fertility. Nature never hurried. Neither did history. You gently pick up a handful of the familiar black earth. It slips slowly between your fingers. Each grain appears ordinary, yet together they hold Once this soil was liquid rock flowing across the land at unimaginable temperatures. Before that it rested deep beneath the earth's crust. Before people, before forests, before even the oldest stories remembered around your fires. Now it nourishes flowers, trees, animals, people. One transformation quietly made another possible. Geologists sometimes describe volcanic landscapes as places where destruction and creation become impossible to separate. The same eruptions capable of overwhelming existing ecosystems eventually create conditions supporting remarkable biodiversity and long-term ecological renewal. Both realities belong to the same story. The Earth writes slowly, but it writes beautifully as the fire continues fading into glowing embers. You think about all the lessons the mountain has offered across these many seasons. You learn to observe before acting, to notice birds changing their flight, to taste the spring water, to watch the color of smoke, to remember the smallest details because tomorrow might depend upon them. You learn that abundance carries responsibility. Taking everything today leaves nothing for tomorrow. Leaving healthy roots in the ground allows future harvests. Allowing young animals to mature strengthens future herds. Respect became another form of survival. You learned that strangers often arrive carrying gifts you cannot yet imagine. Not always gifts held in their hands. Sometimes they bring new songs, new seeds, new stories, new ways of seeing familiar landscapes. Knowledge grows richer when shared. You learned that memory matters, not only the memory preserved inside ash beneath forgotten camps, the memory carried inside voices around evening fires, inside children's questions, inside old hands patiently teaching young ones how to recognize edible plants or read changing clouds. Some memories become tools, others become kindness. Both deserve careful protection. Historians continue exploring one enduring mystery surrounding humanity's relationship with fertile volcanic regions. Did exceptionally productive landscapes encourage greater cooperation because resources were abundant, or did communities become successful precisely because they learned cooperation first? Archaeological evidence offers persuasive clues for both possibilities, yet no single answer fully explains every ancient society. Perhaps the question itself misses something important. Perhaps people and landscapes shaped one another together. The mountain influenced you. You influenced the valley. The story belongs to both. As midnight approaches, the sky becomes astonishingly clear. The great ribbon of stars stretches from one horizon to the other. Somewhere beyond those distant ridges lie other valleys, other rivers, other volcanoes, other people watching different skies while asking the same quiet questions. Where should we gather? When should we move? How do we care for the land that feeds us? How do we prepare children for seasons they have never seen? Although no one here knows it, similar conversations will continue for thousands of years. They will unfold beside rivers in Mesopotamia, among volcanic highlands in East Africa, across fertile islands shaped by Pacific volcanoes, within the shadow of great mountains in Central America. Near the slopes of Vesuvius, Etna, Fuji, Merapi, Kilimanjaro, and countless other peaks where human communities discover both opportunity and uncertainty. Different languages, different traditions, the same patient relationship between people and living landscapes. Modern satellite images reveal that many of the world's most productive agricultural regions still occupy ancient volcanic soils. Crops continue flourishing upon land transformed by eruptions that occurred centuries, millennia, or even millions of years ago. Farmers today often benefit from geological events so ancient that no human memory reaches back to witness them. The mountain continues giving. Long after the fire has cooled, long after the stories have changed, long after individual lives have quietly become history. You close your eyes for a moment. The gentle sounds surrounding you become wonderfully familiar. The steady whisper of flowing water, the distant call of a night bird, the soft rustle of leaves moving through cool air, the quiet breathing of families sleeping peacefully nearby. Nothing asks for attention. Everything simply exists. You realize that this valley has never truly belonged to anyone. Not to your community, not to the travelers, not even to the generations who will someday follow. People arrive, people learn, people care for the land as best they can. Then one day they leave it to others. The mountain remains, the soil remembers, the rivers continue flowing. Perhaps that is the gentlest lesson of all. We do not inherit the earth from those who came before us. We briefly join a story that began long before our arrival and will continue long after we are gone. Every careful choice becomes another quiet sentence within that story. Every shared meal, every protected forest, every seed left grow. Every child taught to observe before taking. These ordinary moments become the true architecture of civilization. Not walls, not monuments, not kingdoms, simply countless acts of patient stewardship repeated across generations. The first pale light of dawn slowly begins touching the eastern horizon. Another day quietly prepares to begin. The mountain welcomes it without ceremony. Birds stir among the branches. Mist gathers once more above the stream. The black, volcanic earth glistens softly beneath the returning sunlight, exactly as it did on the morning you first arrived. The journey has come full circle. You take one final slow breath, filling your lungs with the cool, clean air of this remarkable valley. Then you quietly rise, knowing that somewhere beneath your feet ancient fire still sleeps, transformed into fertile earth that has nourished not only your body but your understanding of how deeply every human life is rooted within the patient rhythms of the natural world. And as the warm light spreads across the valley one final time, you leave with a simple truth resting gently in your heart. The greatest treasures of history are not always hidden inside lost cities or buried beneath forgotten temples. Sometimes they lie quietly beneath a handful of dark soil, waiting to remind us that even the fiercest forces of nature can, with enough time, become the foundation upon which hope, community, and countless generations choose to grow. Now, as the valley slowly disappears into the soft golden light of morning, allow your thoughts to become as peaceful as the quiet stream winding through the fertile earth. Let the mountain remain where it has always been, steady, silent, and patient, while the stories you have gathered drift gently into the distance like wood smoke rising into a calm sky. There is no need to hurry anywhere now. The baskets have been filled, the fires have burned low. The travelers have returned, and the children sleep safely beneath familiar stars. Every lesson the mountain wished to share has already been offered, not through loud proclamations, but through seasons of careful observation, quiet gratitude, and respect for a landscape that gave generously without asking for recognition. Perhaps somewhere in your own world there is a place that has patiently shaped your life in much the same way a familiar path, a favorite tree, a garden, a river, or simply a patch of earth you have walked across so many times that it has quietly become part of who you are. Like the people of this valley, we often understand such gifts only after many seasons have passed. So as your breathing grows slower and the last stars fade into the brightness of a new day, let the image of that ancient volcanic valley remain with you. A place where destruction became renewal, where wandering became belonging, where ordinary people, through kindness, patience, and shared wisdom, gently began shaping the future, one careful harvest at a time. And with that peaceful thought resting softly beside you, allow yourself to drift into comfortable rest, knowing that the earth will continue its quiet work through the night, through the seasons, and through the ages, patiently creating new stories just as it always has.